Fierce battle erupted in the wild swamp. A squad of knights clashed with monstrous creatures resembling insects, their swords and spears colliding with chitinous claws in a desperate struggle. In the chaos of the fight, the squad commander shouted loudly for reinforcements to come out and support the other commanders on the field, but a young dark-haired knight standing aside calmly said there was no need for that. His statement caught the attention of the first officer. She turned around, surprised, and addressing him by the rank first officer, questioned his words. He simply looked at the huge insect-like beast, his hand resting on the sword hilt, and said that it was his prey. He again watches the night when a young man with light spiky hair rushed into battle and easily sliced the monster in half. The spectators recognized him as the famous sword Alta Schweitz, the youngest knight of the kingdom. The knight awakens a memory. The dark-haired knight sees his past again, the world he lived in before reincarnation. In that life, he was a man named Raoul Isouth, who devoted his entire life to the way of the sword. It was a lonely life, without family or friends. The path he walked alone was meant to end quietly, and that is exactly how it ended. Years passed after that death. He was reborn in this world under the name Alta, and to test what he was now capable of, he traveled as a mercenary, fought in wars, and destroyed every enemy until he earned the title of Holy Sword, a master without equal. Thanks to the strong hidden magic he was born with, his skills almost returned to their former peak. Having received a second chance, Alta decided to squeeze everything out of his new life, to earn money and secure a comfortable retirement, and now he serves in the order of Sirius Black Knights in the kingdom of Galdia, the land of his new birth. She stood before his commander, Lemir, who was casually sitting with her feet on the table, and reported that the mission to exterminate the abnormally proliferated demonic creature was successful. Although the squad's combat strength suffered several injuries, there were no fatalities. With a confident smirk, she praised him for the brilliant work. Eagerly, he asked if he would receive a bonus for each kill, informing that he had counted them in total 1,259. Having set his priorities, he stood straight by the door of her office and sincerely thanked her. Her curiosity piqued. Lemir noticed that money was the second thing he mentioned. She leaned forward, asking what he planned to spend it on. He replied that it was nothing special. He was just saving money for something that would come in handy in the future. His uncertain answer upset her. She lunged forward, grabbed his uniform, and sharply asked why such a young man did not speak of dreams or passion, what truly ignited his heart. Stunned, he only replied that it was nothing special. He retreated, his face became serious. In his mind, he understood that holding the sword did not awaken a thirst for power in him. It was that feeling from a previous life called burnout, and he decided that he was simply not interested in anything, which he had never told anyone. Shaking off heavy thoughts, his face blossomed into a broad, cheerful smile, and he said that he was still young and would simply not rush. His carefreeness caused the commander to laugh sincerely. She smiled and said she liked it. Standing before her, he thought that although she was a bit troublesome as a chief, it was pleasant to talk with her, and suddenly an idea struck her. She pointed at him and said she had thought of something. Suddenly she was enlightened, and with one decisive move she cut the document on the table. As the first officer, Alta announced that she had the perfect mission for someone like him. He took the papers, quickly reviewed them, and asked if his next task was to be a guard. He examined the sketch the commander handed him. It showed a young woman with delicate features, and Lemir's voice explained that there was an unpleasant rumor going around, so until they were sure she was safe, he would accompany her. When he heard that the mission paid twice as much, he eagerly agreed and shouted sharply, "Let's go." However, Lemir warned hiring the first officer just because of rumors meant the job definitely would not be easy. He thought about the prospect of double pay for what seemed like a simple task. His commander noted that he was easy to understand, then said she had already taken care of the guards and it was time to act, and he mentally replied dryly, "Roger." This task would lead him to the higher education department of the Fiorum Academy, a grand, sprawling institution surrounded by high stone walls. In the academy courtyard, the morning air buzzed with students' greetings, when suddenly a youth shouted for everyone to clear the way. The crowd parted to let Iris Rainful through. She was known as the only daughter of the Rainful family, one of the 4 great houses of the kingdom, and as the holder of the formidable title Sword Saint Princess. She walked by accompanied, and 2 students from afar could not take their eyes off her. One whispered how beautiful Iris was, and the other added that just being her classmate was already something to boast about, even though they had never spoken. Later in the classroom, their conversation about her continued. One of the girls confessed that her father said Irisama was most likely to become the next king. The friend froze in shock when she realized that this possible future monarch was only 15 years old, the same age as them. She stands by the window, her face gloomy, and contemplates what those born with everything are like. Her thoughts were suddenly interrupted by the sight of her friend Arya Natria, who had dozed off at her desk. Gently waking her, Iris sincerely thanked her for the help with the morning practice. Arya, now awake, gently strokes Iris's head and says how sweet she is. In response, she thanks Iris, and this gesture brings a light, satisfied smile to the princess's face. The conversation turned to the recent fencing exam. Arya called it a pleasant break and offered to join Iris anytime for practice, but Iris quietly insisted that she still needed more training. When the school bell rang, her determination grew even stronger. She silently vowed to train until she became a swordswoman who could never be defeated. Later in class, the noise of the students suddenly stopped. A new figure appeared. A boy in a ceremonial cloak stood at the front and ordered everyone to sit down, while the students whispered, not understanding who he was. He looked at the class and introduced himself. From today, I am your new homeroom teacher and temporary instructor in Kenjutsu. My name is Alta Schweitz. The announcement swept through the class like a wave of shock. Iris froze in surprise, the students burst out in disbelief, and the word sensei echoed for a long time in their collective astonishment. She looks at the boy with distrust, not believing that he is the one to teach them swordsmanship. Stopping in her tracks, she firmly demands to know how he dares to call himself a Kenjutsu instructor, and Alta tries to calm her, saying that the master himself gave consent, but his words change almost nothing. She is still angry. The classmates unanimously agreed. Arya Natria loudly wonders, how is it possible to replace a homeroom teacher in the middle of the semester? Another student reminds everyone of Iris's formidable reputation. She won the national Kenjutsu tournament at the age of 10 and remains undefeated, thus earning the title, Princess the Holy Sword. He calmly listens to their protests, then suggests the whole class hold a simulated fight. With a confident smile, he announces that if he loses, he will leave the class forever. The challenge leads them to the martial arts arena. Iris hesitates over the proposal of a demonstration fight, and then a student with spiky hair steps forward, accepts the challenge on her behalf, and loudly says that he can handle Ulto and Iris does not need to fight. The student reads Ulti a lecture about the nature of their weapon and mockingly asks if he even knows what a mocksword is. He explains, the blade of the magic sword does not cut or cause blood, but when it hits it definitely hurts. He sets the condition. If Alta hits him even once before the end of the session, he will admit defeat. Alta simply agrees and calmly takes a training sword from the nearby rack. The new instructor, already armed, turned to the gathered students and waved off. Fighting one-on-one is a hassle. Instead, he threw a shocking challenge. Let each make one attack on him. As soon as he speaks, the action happens instantly. Students are thrown into the air, their training swords clatter on the ground, and Alta stands in the very center of the chaos unharmed, and calmly says that everyone can attack. Tojur's stunning skill leaves the rest of the students shocked and defeated. The defeated students staggered from the lightning-fast defeat. One, still on the ground, cannot believe how it happened that 20 of them lost, recalling that someone asked for leniency. Nearby, Arya Natria looks worried and quietly whispers the name Iris. Alta stands calmly, thinking to herself that the new instructor is really strong, much stronger than the previous one. From the bench nearby, Iris, Rainful, and Arya are looking at him, and Arya is the first to say that the new instructor is really powerful. The words of the friend barely reach Iris's eyes narrow, all attention fixed on Ulta. One thought devours her mind. Why would a person with such an obvious level of skill propose a demonstration fight on Ulta? Prompted by this question, she stands up and strides swiftly to the center of the training hall. How unfortunate, she exclaims, her voice cutting through the whisper. She orders everyone to step back and firmly says she will manage on her own. Her statement was met with mocking laughter from the other students. One of them sneered at her. Don't think you can defeat us, and declared that from now on the real fight begins. In response to the commotion, Alta turned to Iris and Arya with a smile and said that the next ones were them, and time was short, so they had to hurry. Iris decisively accepted the challenge without hesitation. She takes a step forward and looks him straight in the eyes. Fate is sad, she begins, sincerely apologizing for underestimating him, but her voice quickly becomes confident, says she has already figured out his technique, and his childish tricks will no longer work on her. After her bold statement, she and Arya turn their backs on him. Arya says she has had enough and walks away. Iris agrees, and they leave together, leaving Alta alone as the undisputed winner of the training fight. Her retreat was instantaneous. With a bright flash, the Holy Sword Princess rushed forward. Her adorned blade clashed with another and scattered a cloud of sparks. Confrontation had finally come. Iris Rainful stood opposite Ulti, and fierce determination blazed on her face, was preparing to engage in direct combat with him. Before she could react, Arya dashed forward and launched a lightning-fast attack, but her strike was easily met. His blade parried the blow, and the observing student could not believe it was blocked. One parry exploded into a fierce clash, the air filled with the relentless clanging of steel on steel. Watching the duel, Iris felt a surge in her chest. Alta moved even faster than before, leaving no gaps in defense, and if she didn't find a weak spot, she would have to push beyond her limits. Meanwhile, Alta remained completely focused. his blade seeming like a flawless extension of his will. The clash of their swords continued with dazzling speed. The student watching was completely lost and could not understand what had happened in that whirlwind of movement. When the fight momentarily quieted, Alta froze, inwardly amazed that in this country there was a student with such skill, and turning his gaze to the breathless Iris, directly asked, "Did you acknowledge my true mastery?" She did not answer with a word. Instead, Iris sharply inhaled, her eyes widened with deep realization. Her hand gripped the sword tighter, and this sudden change in behavior caught Alta by surprise. She gathered her courage and led her classmates in a furious attack from several sides, blades flashing everywhere, focusing on Alti, who stood at the epicenter of the storm and deflected every strike with incredible ease. The movements of his legs were blurred, a dance of perfect economy as he shifted his weight to meet the next strike. He took her blade directly, his face calm. He praised her for trying to find his blind spot, but said it was difficult in such an open place, and with a determined look added that he would take the initiative himself. As promised, he dashed forward. His speed made the spectators just freeze and watch as he stubbornly advanced. Seeing his friend in his path, Iris urgently shouted to Arya to retreat. The duel reached a heated tension, the whirl of steel spinning in motion, when suddenly a clear bell rang across the training ground. The sound broke the tension and abruptly stopped the fight. All three fighters froze, and Alta raised her head with slight surprise. She recognized the signal for the end of the period. She froze, sweat dripping down her forehead, and the realization of the chasm between their skills fell upon her, leaving her with wide-open eyes and breathless. He addressed them calmly and politely, and announced that, as promised, he would now be their homeroom teacher and temporary instructor in Kenjutsu. Breaking the stunned silence, he asked if anyone had questions or objections, and then Iris looked at him and suddenly asked an unexpected question: how old he was. Shock was felt when Altid cheerfully announced that he was turning 12 this year. He officially placed himself under the care of the students and asked not to be judged by his youthful appearance. This revelation stunned Iris, who could only think that such a young person should be in the basic training department, not teaching advanced students. He mentally runs through the mission. His youthful appearance turned out to be a predictable problem for disguise in the role of instructor after the introduction. He already considers the infiltration phase completed, but still wonders if his commander correctly perceives the situation he is using. Later, Commander Lemir Owen explains her logic to Alta. She admits that Iris was initially a candidate for the Order of Knights, and Lemir wanted to assign her a guard, but correctly predicted Iris would refuse, proudly stating that she was strong enough on her own and did not need a guard. Lemir confirms that the princess, the Sword Saint, is indeed very strong, just as she says. He agrees, considering what she has shown. Iris is mostly right in her self-assessment. Then he notes that in his previous world, when he was 30, he was called something like Sword Saint. His thoughts clear up. Iris is skilled, but not yet at the level of a true Sword Saint. The daydream is interrupted by Commander Lemir, who suggests settling down and says he needs to be taken to the medical station. After some time, when he was walking with Iris, her friend Arya shouted, asking if she was okay. Alta thought to himself that he would never have expected to hear the title Sword Saint from someone like Iris. He turns to Iris and admits she is right. He still hasn't been able to strike her with his sword. Then he quietly wonders if she has surpassed her. Her face tightened with determination. She did not lose. She fiercely repeats to herself, she simply could not lose. She froze in stunned silence, the realization of her loss crashing down on her, and it was the first time since people began calling her the Sword Saint that she felt such a deep difference in power. Her sword, she understood, seemed not even to have touched. Her eyes narrowed with sudden fierce determination. He was not fighting seriously, and neither was she. This was not the end yet. As Altus turned away and walked off, a child's voice broke the street silence. S.H. Whitesensei. The boy was thinking aloud whether Altus had used magic, and what would happen if he decided to fight back. He turned his gaze to the girl standing there, surprise evident in his eyes, but before he could process it all, she addressed him directly, her voice blazing. Seriously, find me, please. And that was the very moment the boy's first meeting with the one known as the Sword Devourer. Iris Rainful looks intently at the young instructor, a stern expression on her face, and directly asks if he really intends to fight her seriously. He does not answer with words, only laughs carelessly, his eyes tightly squinting. He asked what had come over her, insisting that just a moment ago he was fighting quite seriously. Surrounded by a crowd, she begins to protest, but he has already turned away and points to the large doors, reminding her that they will be late for the next lesson and urging her to go. Other students watch this scene bewildered. After the training fight, walking down the stone corridor of the academy, the young instructor suddenly heard a call. Altus Sensei turned around and saw another man in an instructor's robe walking towards him. The man introduced himself as OTZ Coldstar, head of the academic year, and enthusiastically noted the terrifying skill of Iris Rainful's, saying that her previous Kenjutsu instructor was so stunned that he only regretted he could not teach her anything more. The story continues. The director told him that the new teacher was actually a knight on a secret undercover mission. Altus smiles and admits the truth, but hisses at OTZ because of his loud voice. OTZ apologizes, but Altus waves it off. The idea of infiltration really excites her. TZ winked, confident that Altus would get along with the students, and joked that any claimant to the throne would be lucky to have such a guardian. Altus's face became thoughtful. He hopes so, but admits he has questions because he fears he might have broken the spirit of a student. The demonstration literally enchanted the female students around the table. They surrounded the new teacher, showered him with praise and questions, marveled at his unexpected strength despite his youth, eagerly asked where he was from, what he was passionate about, and even his height, invited him to spend time with them after lessons, and one girl confidently declared that he still would not win against them. But the guys did not share this warm welcome. From afar they looked with smoldering envy, and Alta did not notice their glances at all and just smiled to himself, thinking that he got along wonderfully with the class. He addressed the class and announced that all subsequent questions could wait until tomorrow. Although this was not the reaction he expected, for a temporary teacher it was quite acceptable, and as he turned back, he thought that only one troublemaker remained to be tamed. At that very moment, Iris Reinfeld blocked his way. With a determined expression, she directly asked him to fight seriously with her. He looked at her condescendingly, and a slight irritation flashed across his face when he noticed her persistence. She decisively lunged forward, calling his title each time and begging, and he sighed and reminded her that he had already said in their training fight he fought seriously. To himself, he had to admit that her strength impressed him, and this was quite expected, since she was a princess, the Holy Sword, but aloud he simply asked her not to use that title. She completely ignored his request. Her gaze sharpened as she insisted that he did not fight seriously at all. Then she clearly formulated a demand, a duel using spells which, as she reminded, were forbidden in their previous match. A drop of sweat rolled down Alta's face. He realized the matter was worse than he thought. Her pleading grew. She grabbed his hand, begged for help with work, and swore to do anything for it. He shuddered, his face frozen with irritation. He did not want trouble and did not understand why this one, who could not lose, so persistently wanted to make an enemy of him. He felt the full weight of her proposal. When a girl says, "I will do anything," it is always a worrying sign, so to test her determination, he posed a hypothetical question. What would she do if asked to do something unpleasant? The question completely stunned Iris unexpectedly. Believing he had conveyed his point and she understood the hint, he began to say that everything was fine. He thought the tactic worked, but Iris clenched the hem of her skirt and stood firm. Her face blossomed a deep red. She trembled and thoughts raced. She gathered her courage. If the teacher really wanted this, she was ready to go to the end. Her unexpected determination caught him off guard, and he widened his eyes in shock. He could not believe she was really serious. A tense silence hung between them. She was embarrassed and confused, and he just watched. She lightly tapped her on the head with a folded fan, bringing her back to reality, and he explained. It was not determination, but despair. His sharp assessment confused Iris. She was bewildered and could not utter a word. He apologized for snapping at her, but admitted that her situation really looked problematic, and he did not see an easy way to solve it. Seeing her unwavering, desperate determination, he gave in and said that if she was ready to go so far, he would set one condition for their duel. Hope instantly lit up on Iris's face, and she gladly agreed. He set the conditions, pointing to the distant clock tower. From that moment she had 30 minutes. If she caught up with him within that time, he would fight her seriously. If not, she would have to surrender. Iris, with unshakable resolve, accepted the challenge. She froze, stunned, watching as he announced his terms, and immediately jumped straight out of the second-floor window. He skillfully landed on the railing below, turned to her with a wide, shining smile, and declared that he would run from her across the schoolyard. Although it sounded childish, he had no intention of letting her win. She had not yet fully comprehended his words when he dashed forward, rapidly gaining speed and startling other students as he rushed past them along the alley. He leapt into the air, infusing his body with magic to enhance himself. He knew that even in a child's body he could perform physical feats far surpassing the strength of an ordinary adult. This was the true power of the former sword saint. Iris rushed after him, gritting her teeth with determination. She promised not to let him escape, because she realized that the one she was chasing was very skillful. It was time for her to get serious too. The pursuit led her into the wooded part of the campus, where she finally lost sight of him. She muttered irritably that he really behaved like a child, but quickly pulled herself together. There was still time on the clock. She just had to find a way to catch him. She stood pondering the next step, when suddenly a small object jumped out from the trees and hit her right on the shoulder. This projectile was not from her teacher. two figures emerged from the shadows of the forest one, a huge, menacing man in dark glasses with two curved blades, who grimly smiled at the Holy Sword Princess and said that finally she was completely alone. She immediately recognized her attacker's killers. Struggling, she tried to move. The hooded figure coldly noted the paralyzing poison now flowing through her veins and said that this was the perfect weapon. A spark of strength flashed in her clenched fist, but the poison gripped her quickly and mercilessly. The poison throws her to her knees, the body does not obey. A large man in dark glasses laughs cruelly, mocking her helplessness and taunting how she plans to fight if she cannot even raise her hand. Piercing cold runs through her. Her eyes widen, a spark of defiance fights the creeping fear. With growing horror, she realizes that she is about to be killed. The very thought seems pathetic to her, although she prepared for this. When it becomes reality, she is simply stunned. From a branch above, a quiet voice simply sounds. Oh, a small figure in a cloak above watches these scenes. Suddenly another figure bursts into the clearing. Arya Natria, her classmate, clenching magical energy in her palms and shouting decisively that she will not allow Iris to die here. Her appearance only amuses the giant killer. He smiles widely and summons the so-called princess, the Holy Sword, mocking that she is no more than a glorified but wasted princess. The mentor Alta in a dark cloak addressed Iris, and Arya, this enemy is my business. You retreat. He warns Iris that what she will see may shock the student and advises her to close her eyes. Iris raises her gaze distrustfully and recognizes him, and he calmly confirms, yes, this is the sensei. He stood opposite the burly killer, who, seeing him, laughed contemptuously. He mocked, saying this was just an unarmed boy, and sarcastically called him wonderful reinforcement. In the next moment, the killer's mockery was cut off, his head was cruelly severed from his shoulders, and a look of shock froze on his face. The attack was so lightning fast that Arya only froze in disbelief. She realized it was too fast to see. Nearby, Iris looked from the ground, and their instructor remained perfectly. He stood with an outstretched hand, the source of the invisible attack. Iris, still weak, wondered if what she had just seen was her teacher's duel with magic. He turned his gaze to the last figure in the hood and calmly said that thanks to her, he knew their deadly magic. The killer asked in surprise why he was not chasing those who fled, and the instructor replied that he would do so if necessary. He continued the survey and quickly realized this was a group of professional killers. Seeing that the dead man was the only one who did not flee, he guessed that other reinforcements were probably lurking nearby. Meanwhile, Commander Lemir Owen sighed. Her premonition of an attack had come true, but she admitted that she had miscalculated and that her target turned out to be strangely skillful. His gaze fell on the wounded Iris Rainful, who was kneeling. He expressed the bitter truth: someone wants her dead. A new figure emerged from the shadows, threw back the hood, and rejoiced upon learning that she would finally be able to fight the princess Holy Sword. Despite her injury, Iris met his gaze, her determination unbroken, although the killer noticed that she was just a girl and seemingly incapable of such a powerful attack. He pointed his finger directly at the boy with a smug smile and said in a mocking voice, "There you are," at first brushing it off as a pointless fight, but now considering himself lucky. A katana emerges with a sharp, metallic ring from the sheath. But the blade does not belong to the hooded killer. Among the trees appears a new figure with an outstretched sword, a burly man with a shaved head and sharp marks on his face, who calls himself Azuma, one of the Kinkakushu. In a forest clearing littered with the bodies of the dead, swordsman Azuma stands over his grim creation. Nearby, a young boy, Iris Rainful, watches as Commander Lemir Owen steps forward to confront the killer and demands to know his name, though she already recognizes him as a member of Kinkakushu's infamous mercenary clan that kills anyone for the right price. The cold look finally confirms her suspicions. He is indeed Zuma Kurai from Kinkakushu. Here, indifferently, he informs Azuma that he has entered their country and orders him to stand still, adding that her current matter is a clash with the boy standing behind him, and that Azuma's turn may come during or after the fight, yet the killer seems to sense a tremendous power radiating from her. He watches the tense confrontation, his face serious. In his thoughts, he understands that he does not feel the joy of battle that others seem to have. Nearby, Iris looks at everything with obvious anxiety. A smile played on Azumi Kuria's lips. She was basking in this growing tension and said he wished the moment would last forever, but he could no longer hold himself back, while opposite him Lemir stood ready. The hand grips the hilt of her sword, fingers trembling with readiness. Boy immediately recognizes this stance. In the blurred whirl of movement, both warriors explode into action. Lemir rushes forward, her blade flashes in a swift strike. The blow is delivered simultaneously with the drawing of the sword. Azuma mirrors her, his katana bursts from its sheath to meet the attack head-on. The swords clash with a deafening roar. At the point of impact, a dazzling star of sparks explodes. Commander Lemir Owen recoiled, unable to notice the strike that had just reached her. she realized it was another invisible sword strike, and opposite, the assassin Azuma Karai confirmed her suspicion. With a grim look, his attack was truly invisible. Standing aside, a young man in a dark cloak instantly understood everything. He recognized the technique, the invisible wind blade that repels the opponent, a skill perfected by the legendary sword Saint Raoul Issa. The opponent, Azuma, sheathes his blade, his face showing genuine surprise. He admits he never thought he could fight against the kenjutsu of the sacred sword, since he himself uses wind magic, and looks at the boy with new respect, calling him a very interesting guy. He speaks in his own power manifests. A large, complex magical circle glows brightly in the air before him, and at its center flickers a wind rune. Energy crackles around Azuma as he prepares to unleash his wind attack, and opposite the boy stands firm, his wind blade swirling above his hand, ready to accept the challenge. Their forces collide in a fierce storm of invisible slashes, the air seeming to crack from the blows, and Lemir stands stunned, realizing they exchange these devastating cuts without moving from their place. Azuma's power grows even more. Around him forms a more complex magical circle with runes of wind, cutting, and void, and a maniacal smile blooms on his bloodied face as he swings his katana and growls with delight at the duel. The two fighters break balance and rush at each other. Across the clearing ahead lies the decisive battle. He dashed with dazzling speed, his blade cleanly slicing through the torso of his Azuma Curia. From the terrible wound, a fountain of dark blood shot out, and the assassin's body was thrown back by the force of the blow. The assassin staggered, his face twisted with shock and pain. He grabbed the wound, his body trembling, life slowly fading. Despite a mortal wound, Azuma managed to twist a bitter smile and demanded to know the name of his opponent, and the boy met his gaze and simply named him directly Sh Vaitsu. Hearing the name, Azuma quietly smiled, bowed his head in respect, and admitted that he never thought he would feel such delight at the moment of his own death. He was glad and thought it was better than rotting in the east. With a final maniacal laugh, Kurie's body disintegrated into a cloud of dark particles that scattered into oblivion right before Alta's eyes. The danger receded. Alta sighed with relief for a long time. Iris, looking at him, noticed that she had not seen him so focused in battle for a long time. He admitted that, as always, he was nervous. He stood before her in a quiet forest clearing, apologizing for killing 2 killers before her eyes, and hoped that now she understood how strong he was. He told her that the enemies had long disappeared, and now everything was fine, extended his hand to help her up, and Iris looked at his hand, thanked him, and placed hers in his. He firmly squeezed her hand, his voice was calm, and he assured her, "I am here." Iris, still trembling from the experience, met his gaze. Her composure stunned him. For a moment he could not believe it. Even after such a brutal fight, she remained focused, and he wondered if she was real. Later, in one of the academy's rooms, Iris confirmed that she had completed the preparation. The building stood silently under the sky, a sharp contrast to the recent violence. He sat opposite her and sincerely regretted that he had scared her. As her guardian, he felt he had to reflect on his actions, especially since he was glad she was not too badly hurt. She calmed him down. Everything was fine, she was just a little upset. She noticed that he, sensei, seemed used to such things, and he, with a slight smile, explained that he was supposedly born in a dangerous place in what he called his previous life. Her face became serious. After a moment of hesitation, she asked him again if he would fight seriously with her this time, and this request caught him by surprise, reminding him of the promise he had truly made to her. He was amazed by her stubbornness and directly asked why she so much wanted to fight with him. Inside, however, he knew what she lacked: a harsh, real fight to the death, and if they fought for real right now, he would be confident in the outcome. She stood up and turned away. Determination in her was obvious. She stated that her goal now was to finish school, a promise given to her mother, and he, looking at her, felt a wave of confusion and realized he had to find a good reason to refuse her without jeopardizing his mission. He listens, surprised, while Iris turns away and squeezes her bandaged hand. She quietly confesses that after graduation she wants to become a knight. He responded with a warm smile and said that, being a knight himself, he gladly supports her aspiration, and although those who want to see her as the next ruler might be upset, he believes she can succeed. A barely noticeable smile touched her lips. Her expression becomes serious again. She tells that in pursuit of that dream, she honed her skills and never suffered defeat. Because of this, she was nicknamed the Sword Saint Princess. But despite everything she feels, she has not become stronger at all. She continued to complain that she constantly wins. Into this sluggish, challenge-free life suddenly burst her new instructor, who appeared at the academy. Leaning forward with burning determination, she says this is her chance to grow, an opportunity she will not let go. When she speaks, he feels the depth of her convictions. She wants to fight him, well knowing her strength, because she desperately wants to win and break her stagnation. He reflects on her passionate request, feeling it would be wrong not to respect the desire of a potential future colleague. Iris looks at him, a drop of sweat shining on her forehead, she anxiously awaits his decision. He raises his hand, interrupting her thoughts, says that her reasoning annoys him, and explains that he does not know how long they will have to fight for her to get the desired result. Iris, thinking he is refusing, begins to object. She had not yet continued when he clarified his true intention. He will give her special lessons, and so that other students do not suspect anything, they will meet after classes. Starting the next day, then he asks if such an arrangement suits her. Her face tightened with determination. She has one goal: to become stronger, and noticing this, Alta suggests starting with a training duel using spells. In response, she shines. Former irritation changes to a bright smile, and she eagerly accepts his mentorship. He contemplates his new duties, because as her temporary instructor, he will help her grow, which in turn will ease his main mission as a bodyguard, yet he cannot help but feel the weight of his increasingly growing responsibilities. Walking down one of the grand corridors of the academy, he contemplates the situation. It seems everything is proceeding naturally, and he understands that the circumstances are perfect for his plan. He stops her on the stairs and says there is one more thing: he wants her to use it constantly, 24 hours a day. When she asks what it is, he takes out a small object resembling a fan, and a broad smile spreads across his face because he remembers her previous promise to do everything to become stronger. Around the Fiorum Academy, a magical barrier has been raised. The knight assures that it should stop any new intruders, but OTZ Kolstar stands with a grim expression and mutters that the matter with the group called Kinkakushu has become very serious. As he was about to leave, OTZ shouted, asking where he was heading. The young student glanced back with a faint smile and replied that he was just going into the city for a moment, then would continue on his way. She arrives in the bustling part of the city and enters a tavern. Inside, Commander Lemir Owen is already sitting and waiting, holding a tanker in her hand to hide, and says that although she did not need to come personally, she decided to come anyway. The incident was too important. Opposite her, Alta listens, as she demands a report on his first mission when he was on assignment, especially on how things progressed with Lady Iris. He emotionally recounted the recent conversation with Iris, explained to Lemir that he was already on good terms with that girl, and confessed. He gave her an important item to carry, on which he cast a detection spell, so from now on he would know her location at any moment. Returning to the present, he points to the plan of the girls' dormitories on the table and assures Lemir that if they attacked Iris now, he would be there in 10 minutes. Lemir praises his flawless work, but sternly warns not to abuse this power, and Alta just laughs and brushes off the idea. Then he shifts the conversation and asks how the investigation into the attacker has progressed. Alta says the man in glasses was a convict with a history of problems, and the others who escaped are probably the same, and the main problem, he says, is Kinkakushu. Commander Lemir Owen explains the threat in detail, spreading wanted posters on the table. She says that Kinkakushu sow chaos worldwide, and after a long search, she obtained their service records and biographies, and a reward has been announced for the head of each member of this unusual warm subgroup. She warns him not to be driven only by money, adds that she heard Kinkakushu operate in small groups, so she believes some of them may still be in the royal city. Alta, surprised, can only mutter about the reward. He takes a sip from a wooden mug and sighs, admitting that everything is really a mess, regrets because he mistakenly thought they would surrender after he took down one of them. It was a bad idea, and now he realizes he killed a man without making him talk first. The commander abruptly changes the subject and says that a small group of serious Black Knights is currently tracking a man who escaped. She adds that he is the first officer of the same rank as him, known by the code name Blue Sword, and asks if he has ever seen him. Alta replies that they crossed paths during missions, but never really got to know each other. She explains she always left him to himself, that's why he was able to hide his true identity, and when she infiltrated the school under a false name, she needed a reliable agent to manage affairs outside the school. She smiles, saying that Blue Sword is still young but very skilled, and cheerfully suggests that once the mission is over, they will all go out for a drink together. Alta, sipping hot milk, quietly notes that he is underage and does not drink alcohol, but still looks forward to the occasion. The commander leans forward with a jug in hand and jokingly urges him, enough being so stubborn, drink up. Alta pushes his mug away, tells her stop, and sharply retorts that as the commander she should be the stubborn one, and the commander seems to give in and simply says, well, okay. Her face becomes serious again. She tells him that, unfortunately, no evidence has been found linking the one behind everything to the assassination attempt on Lady Iris, so his mission remains unchanged. He must stay vigilant and protect her. She adds that she has heard about Blue Sword's abilities, but for now they must wait for clues, and all the technicians respond to the order with a simple Roger. Outside the royal city, in the ruins of a grand arch structure, shadows gather under the darkening sky. In these ruins, a secret meeting of the Kinkakushu is taking place. One hooded figure sits on an improvised throne made of debris, presiding over the others who stand wrapped in darkness. The seated figure, whose face is half hidden under the hood, speaks coldly and decisively. Azuma is dead. Another member, a young swordsman, throws back his hood with a wide, mocking smile. He is sorry Azuma wanted to kill his target but instead died himself, and he contemptuously asks about those who escaped. The leader did not smile and coldly ordered the swordsmen to disappear from their sight. They said that a useless person like him is not needed here, and the swordsman simply agreed and returned to Lei. But as soon as he returns, the leader raises a small cylindrical device. It flashes with a blinding light, and the leader's voice calmly issues an order to refrain from unnecessary killings. The swordsman sharply turned back, his face twisted with rage. He demanded to know what the leader wanted, shouted that a killer who does not fight is good for nothing, and declared that they have always needed only the Kinkakashu himself. At that very moment, a third figure appears. A young man with spiky light hair emerges behind the leader and presses the cold steel of his blade to his throat, while the leader remains completely motionless, eyes closed. His blade remained steady, but the tense standoff was interrupted by the emergence from the shadows of a bulky figure. The newcomer, a massive, bearded member of Kinkakashu, raised an unusually curved sword and roared for them to stop, reminding that members are forbidden to harm each other during service. Listening as another subordinate, a swordsman in a hood, mockingly declared that he himself wanted to fight the young knight, the leader clarified an important point. Azuma lost not to the sword saint princess, but to her mentor. With a single brief word, he gave the swordsman permission to engage in battle. Even before the duel began, the great hall was suddenly filled with armed soldiers. A squad of knights arrived and surrounded the mercenary assassins, and their commanders stepped forward. His suspicions were confirmed. He had finally cornered them. He explained that he had conducted numerous cleanups in the regions where bandits hid. His men pounced on the shaggy youth, whom he recognized as Beltruso the Blue Sword. While the Kinkakashu leader was recovering from this, the impatient hooded swordsman demanded to know what would happen next. The gigantic bearded enforcer declared that first and foremost they needed to deal with the knights. The hooded swordsman smirked and mockingly noted the bravery of the knights. How dare they stand in their way? In response, the Kinkakashu leader drew an exquisite hilt from its end, flashed a dazzling beam that formed a blade of pure energy. The knight commander watched, stunned, realizing that this was a sword without a physical blade. He addressed the leader of Kula and coldly stated, since they already knew who he was, everything became simpler. He gave them an ultimatum. Do not resist, and I will not kill you, but I will still take their leader into custody. Rejecting the offer, the leader rushed forward, and with a powerful swing of the energy blade, a hail of dark, sharp projectiles flared up, flying straight at the line of knights. First Officer Beltruso stands alone among the fallen Kinkakashu warriors, sword at the ready. The stone courtyard is strewn with bodies, evidence of his swift and brutal counterattack, face set with stern determination, a bloodstain on his cheek. When the Kinkakashu leader turns to leave, Bel calls out to him and reminds him of the promise not to kill needlessly. The leader waved it off, saying it was necessary, and the large bearded guard nearby laughed and said he did not understand Bel at all. The leader throws a casual farewell and begins to retreat. Not wanting to let them escape, Bel rushes forward with a fierce cry, the sword raised high, ready for the decisive strike. Even before his attack could hit, the leader released a powerful stream of water that swirled and crashed onto Bella. Another member of Kinkakashi noted how cruel their organization was, and the leader smiled and said he wanted to have some fun. Those who love to kill should be allowed to do so. The brutal clash gradually subsides with the arrival of a new day. At the Fjorm Iris Rainful Academy, she stands in the courtyard, diligently honing her swordsmanship skills. Her solitary training turns into a dynamic sparring session. Focused and tense, she exchanges a lightning-fast series of strikes with another student, their blades clashing in the quiet morning air. Alta, acting as the instructor, stands aside, nods approvingly, and tells the students she hopes everyone has their own training regimen. Iris's comrades watch admiringly and say how cool she is, and one student asks if she could also wield a one-handed sword. Arya Natria approaches him with a worried face and complains to Alta's sensei. Kenjutsu is not her strong suit. Why can't nobles just have a knight to protect them instead of learning to fight themselves? She kept grumbling to Iris, insisting that even if she became a knight, she had no intention of protecting her. Alta, observing the scene, strangely relaxed and thought that the recent Kinkakashu attack had been successfully concealed. He looked over the students before him. All were at the level of a national school, and many considered Kenjutsu no more than a way of life for the nobility. So in such an environment, he thought Iris the princess, the sword saint, and the throne contender would be unattainable for her classmates. He assumed that after the recent crisis she could focus on her studies, but then he saw her sneaking a glance at him as if asking, "Pay attention." His thoughts were interrupted when Arya called out to him. Her voice was sharp and direct, "Sensei." She stepped forward, hesitating for a moment, then addressed him directly while Iris watched from behind. Her face tightened with determination. "Let's duel," she exclaimed, leaving him momentarily speechless. Inside, she was stunned and did not understand why she was challenging him right now, at their first conversation ever. Arya then explained her motivation. She knew about that secret technique he used against Iris on the first day of classes, a move that seemed to lull the opponent, and was the only one he truly took seriously, and she wanted him to use it on her. When Iris approached to ask Arya what was going on, Alta suddenly remembered their first training clash. It really ended in a draw as soon as time ran out. He smiled, agreeing to her request. "I don't mind if we measure ourselves again." Arya's face lit up, and she clenched her fists in a small, triumphant exclamation. His consent to the duel sent a wave through the crowd. Iris Reinful in particular was clearly embarrassed. Her face reddened. She stammered and bubbled that she had already done something, and her companions looked puzzled by her reaction. While Iris struggled with words, Arya announced that she was ready. She stepped forward. Two shining round devices materialized in her hands. Through the Alta Hall patiently waited, his own sword hanging freely at his side. Wasting no time, she activated her power, and around her appeared a complex shimmering mandala of exquisite shields, with blades rotating in a protective but threatening formation. And she, with closed eyes, stood at the center of this formidable spectacle. Her eyes suddenly opened wide, filled with sharp, unwavering concentration. He met her determined gaze, his face unreadable, gripping the sword with both hands, and simply asked, "Don't be too harsh on me." During training, Alta observes the opponent. Arya Natria stands ready, holding two mock swords in her hands. This technique is extremely complex. One must simultaneously direct equal flows of magical power into both weapons, and in the entire academy, she is the only one capable of this. She lunges forward, a blurred whirl of movement across the training field. Alta stands calmly, his mock sword ready and inviting her to attack when she is prepared. In an instant, she is above him. The blade stopped, almost touching his face. He looks restrained and notices how close she came. Above on the balcony, Iris Rainful and several other students watch the duel unfold. Below, on the training field, Alta stands in place, ready for the next move. Maria intensifies the attack. Surprise appears on her face, yet she continues to deliver rapid strikes. He meets her barrage of attacks. His one sword deflects both her blades with precise, sharp movements, while she spins and makes stabbing lunges. The spectators froze at this spectacle. One of the student guys shouts, disbelieving, comparing Arya's movements to those of a cat. Iris's companion is also shocked and wonders how Arya can move with such incredible speed. Alta blocks the strike again. Arya releases a new power. Dark, magic-embellished energy bursts from both her mock swords and rushes toward him with a powerful explosion. When she intensified the pressure, Alta calmly observed her movements. He noticed her skill and understood that she was carefully looking for a gap in his defense. She broke the silence and asked if something was wrong. Arya replied with a stern expression that she was experimenting with different approaches, while Iris watched from the side and thought that Arya should stick to her usual style. With a sharp cry, she rushed forward, her body becoming just a blurred spot, and Alta instantly noticed. She had sped up even more, and the student nearby looked, unable to believe his eyes. The air was filled with the sharp clang of steel as she unleashed a barrage of swift attacks. He met every strike's blade and unyielding shield against the relentless assault. Her feet danced across the training hall, relentlessly pressing forward as the barrage of strikes continued without pause. Deflecting another blow, he suddenly realized she possessed not just skill, but genuine combat experience, and he decided that she was so tough she could probably even fight Zumi Korai from Kankakashi. Deciding that the duel had already served its purpose, he shouted to her that it was time to stop, explaining that her skills were already proven, and their deadlock led nowhere especially, because she did not allow him to keep his distance. She did not listen to him and was rushing into the attack. With one swift movement, he grabbed her by the wrist and stopped the blade a moment before it struck. His voice was firm when he repeated, "I told Yao stop." He takes her by the hand and throws, "You still talk," and Arya looks down, thanks, and admits that he is indeed strong. Her face softened, blooming with a gentle, almost relieved smile. She raised her eyes to him, seeking confirmation. "Correct." Silence breaks, and the surrounding students burst into thunderous applause, celebrating the incredible skill shown in both fights. Mid the applause, Arya turns away from Ulta and quickly runs up to Iris, impatiently asking if she saw her performance. Iris smiles, says she did, and praises Arya for the incredible performance. The praise is immediately interrupted by a question. Iris reminds Arya that she previously said she did not want to fight anyone except her, and Arya freezes, pondering this contradiction. Iris quietly laughed and gently stroked Arya's head, kindly asking what that was about. Arya beamed, clearly delighted by the attention, while Alta quietly observed from afar and felt understanding beginning to dawn on him. He realizes that Arya was trying again to ingratiate herself with Iris. This is somewhat endearing to him, but he decides to himself, I will no longer allow her to attack me out of jealousy. Turning his attention back to the rest of the class, Alta claps his hands with renewed enthusiasm and announces that it is time for everyone to return to practice. He finished the training, encouraging the students to grow at their own pace. Smiling slightly, he noted to himself that Iris and Arya were clear exceptions to this advice, while the other students sighed, somewhat discouraged by the instructor's high demands. When the academy bell rings, signaling the end of the day, he leaves with the other teachers. They thank him for his hard work, and their voices and laughter fill the courtyard as everyone disperses. He sighed with relief, thinking his duties were finally over, but suddenly Iris called him. She said she had dressed in uniform and taken a sword dummy to avoid suspicion, and insisted it was time to go. He agreed, though a bit surprised. They found themselves in a secluded thicket of the forest. Iris decisively declared that she would be under his care until sunset, and he, acknowledging her persistence, advised not to rush and to act more calmly. His calm tone makes her ask if he regards this only as a simple fight. She says that for her, the main thing is to see what he is capable of. He understands that her enthusiasm has made her a bit reckless. She notes how strange it would look if some other student saw them together. Iris, embarrassed, blushes awkwardly and stammers for a moment, but quickly composes herself. And when she insists that since this is her request, their private training must remain an absolute secret, Iris nervously agrees. When they agreed on the terms of the session, he draws his sword. A complex gear-like structure of light materializes around the blade, and he asks her to watch closely, asking if she notices what is happening. He releases a powerful wide swing. The air seems to bend and warp around the arc of his magically enhanced blade, and Iris watches, mesmerized. He turns to Iris and, with a serious and focused expression, asks about the move he just demonstrated. She confirms that she can replicate it. In response, she draws her sword and tries to maneuver, her blade slicing the air in a fast, powerful arc before her. Her attempt, unfortunately, fails. She admits with slight irritation that she couldn't clearly see the technique well enough to properly counter it, and he calmly notes that her honesty is a good trait. He says that although she didn't manage to replicate it, she already has the necessary speed and maneuvering skill to deflect his attack, which clearly surprises her. She stands frozen in place. The thought of an invisible blade echoes in her mind, and she tries to understand what he means. He continues, reminding her of the swordsman Azuma, who previously targeted her, and adds, Azuma managed his kenjutsu, so there is no reason she can't do the same. He saw her potential as equal to Azuma's without any difference, and therefore declared a new goal for himself, to throw the same challenge to Iris. Iris voices her doubt. It is not distrust of him, but doubt in her own strength, whether she can withstand an attack she cannot even see, and while she struggles with this uncertainty, he silently stands under the tree, his face calm and resolute, and leaves slowly fall around. He did it with one quick, smooth gesture. His blade flashed in the air, cutting several falling leaves in half with incredible precision. The sight stunned Iris, and she asked if he really cut those leaves without looking. He confirmed and explained that it is the same feeling as when she caught the deadly intent from the dagger pressed to her shoulder. Reveal this principle so that it is clear. The ability to sense without sight is the sixth sense. He explained that this is the very ability with which Azuma deflected his invisible blade, and said that if Iris could do the same, she would have no problems at all. He honestly admitted that it is difficult. Leaves have no murderous intent, so everything will be complicated, but that is exactly why, he insisted, they train. He encouraged her to try, and after a moment of hesitation she agreed. She took a deep breath, gathering herself under the tree, and leaves began to fall around. With her eyes closed, she rushed forward. Her blade sliced the air in a wide, decisive arc aimed at a single leap. Her blade cut only the air. Everyone watched her attempt, then calmly told her, "Good try." You did not notice Iris's facial expression. It tightened with irritation. He reassures Iris, this is not a skill you learn overnight, so do not despair, but adds that if she does not master this sense, their next duel will be meaningless. Her face tightened with determination as she declared she would do it, and he in response again raised a leaf and ordered her to first try to catch its presence. Since then, each of his days was a balance between Iris's training and his duties as her guardian at the academy, and he often patrolled the grounds late into the night. He stood in the silence of the night, and suddenly his gaze stopped at the large glowing barrier of the academy. Approaching closer, he inspected it and made sure it was working properly. He stands still when Commander Lemir approaches from behind and asks why he now comes to the academy. She continues, saying that she would like him not to go beyond the academy barrier. Her unexpected warning frightened Sam. Lemir clarifies, they are not in the academy, but in one of the corners of the royal capital. This discovery means that the situation has worsened. With a grim expression, she reported, far from them in the church, the bodies of the pursuer squad led by Beltrasso the Blue Sword were found. Depressing silence hung in the academy reception. Commander Lemir, Owen, and Alta Schweitz sit on different sofas, and OTZ Kolstar stands by the fireplace, arms crossed. Hilda turns to the commander, his anxiety is visible. He asks if she is okay. Lemir, looking down at the sword guard, replies briefly and insincerely. She begins the report, her voice firm despite her haggard appearance. 9 corpses of the pursuer group commanded by First Officer Bel Trusso were found in an abandoned building, and she adds that there is no confirmation yet whether the last team member is alive, so they can only wait for his return. Her words paint a grim picture, a ruin soaked with blood and debris. She continues, saying that although there are obvious signs that Bel resisted, no magical marks are found. There is no hint that he even wounded the enemy. Alta realizes the chilling truth. The pursuers were completely stunned. OTZ cannot believe it, but Alta confidently concludes that this new enemy is even stronger than Izumo. His gaze returns to Lemir, who is now clearly upset. He notices her restlessness and understands how painful it is for the commander, who cares so much about his people. Her hand clenches into a fist. She is boiling with rage, unable to accept that Bel could have lost without dealing a single blow. Sitting back in the chair, shadows in the room thicken around him. A quiet determination settles on his face now. He realizes this matter is not foreign to him. He reached for the device on the table and suddenly understood. Good Bel Trusso left them something, a voice recording that preserved the details of his last moments. In the recording, Commander Owen clearly laid out their conclusion. The enemy is a gang of swordsmen, and 3 key figures were identified: the man who led it, the woman who mowed down several from Bel's squad, and the man who personally killed Bel Trusso. She continued and told Alta and OTZ that the third, the killer, is already heading to the academy. This is a man they could not track, and he could appear at any moment. She noticed it was convenient only one enemy came, because she believed that only she and Alta knew how to fight back, and with a determined look declared that they would give him a warm welcome. He merely said, "Roger." The deal was reached. Lemir, considering the circumstances, asked them for help. She entrusted OTZ to ensure that all personnel stayed outside the campus if the fight went beyond the barrier. Inside, everyone confirmed their determination. They were true knights. Z, with a serious expression, reassured Alta, saying that he was responsible for the night patrols and would immediately inform him as soon as something unusual happened. The young instructor smiled slightly, agreed to the terms, and added that of course he would report how many hours he worked, but Lemir sharply looked at him and accused him of just wanting to get paid for overtime. After the briefing, the days passed in deceptively calm silence. No new attacks from the swordsman gang occurred, and life at the academy returned to its usual rhythm. A week had passed since Alta assigned Iris the task, and she was diligently training in a secluded forest glade. Her long hair was blown by the wind as she stood ready with a training sword. With a sharp groan, she started her training, her silhouette blurred in motion as the blade cut through the air. Although she tried, frustration furrowed her brow. She turned to Alta, who was standing by the trunk of a nearby tree watching, and admitted that she barely felt the falling leaf, but could not even touch it, her hand clenched into a fist, a sign of her growing impatience. Her frustration quickly hardened into determination. She looked ahead, sweat drumming on her face, and gathered strength with the thought that she would no longer give up. The new determination urged her on. She dashed the blade, sliced the air, and almost touched another falling leaf. He watched her struggle thoughtfully. He already knew it would take time, but her complete inability to cut even one leaf worried him. This training was far from what she needed to defend herself from the swordsman gang, and he hesitated whether to reveal himself as a knight, hoping that a real threat would make her take things more seriously. He quickly dismissed this thought. Her fiery temper could drive her to recklessly throw herself alone, so with a bitter grimace he thought that it was Iris who could expel him from the academy. He watches her struggle and quietly weighs his options. Although this situation irritates him, he decides for now to obey the commander's orders, because he believes that Iris's training is more important than anything. He stepped out of the trees, approached her directly, and called Iris, praised her for her daily morning training, but asked anxiously if she was pushing herself too hard, and she turned around, surprised by his sudden appearance. Without unnecessary words, he gets to the point. He says that rumors have reached him about her dozing off in other classes, and as the class teacher he cannot ignore this. The accusation leaves Iris wide-eyed and confused. She stammers, trying to explain that the morning practice is to blame, admits that she still hasn't been able to cut a single leaf, insists that training with Arya was not reckless, and promises to be more careful. Her face, a mixture of shame and irritation. Seeing her scraped hands and exhausted state, he decides to intervene and tells her to rest today. Iris immediately protests, asking why they should stop if she is determined to continue. He calmly explains that he intends to change the training method, then suddenly changes the subject and asks what she thinks about going with Arya to have a cup of tea. When he says her name, a voice comes from behind a neighboring tree. Arya steps into the clearing 3 steps away and notes that he noticed her iris turns around, startled by the sudden appearance of her friend. Arya mutters confusedly that she thought she had hidden perfectly. He calmly looks at the two girls and directly asks Arya why she is here. Caught off guard, Arya looks away and blushes a little. She admits that she was worried because he has been acting strangely lately and stopped their morning training. He calmly tells her that he has known for a week that she was spying on them. Hearing this, embarrassed Iris apologizes and explains that she asked their sensei for some extra lessons. He smiles and suggests that everyone move to the dining hall to continue the conversation, thinking to himself that this is better no one was hurt. For Iris, it is a pleasant change, and Arya's jealousy will probably no longer push her to challenge him to duels. But Arya has a completely different idea. She loudly declares that since their sensei is so strong, it is natural for her to have him as a mentor, so from now on she will attend their training sessions. The sudden statement shocked both Alta and Iris. They could only freeze with wide-open eyes. He instantly becomes confused, stammers, and nervously babbles that this was not what he wanted at all, while the two girls watch. She interrupts him, approaches closely, and decisively points her finger. She tells him to leave it alone, rhetorically asking if this is really a problem. The decision in her mind solidified. She threw her arm around the surprised Iris and whispered that this was their secret. He, though big, eventually gave in but warned them not to tell the other students. She finishes the training and announces that that's all for today. Arya seems to accept this easily, while Iris looks completely exhausted, her face pale from fatigue. Although she was tired, she verbally agrees. She thinks, if SH Vet Sensei says so, then it's time to stop. Before they could part ways, he stopped them saying there was one more thing and took out a small, sharp dagger. The blade gleamed. In response, Arya pulls out her hands with a confident smile, completely unfazed by the sudden appearance of the weapon. Arya winked at Iris, reassuringly and a bit boastfully, as if to say she would definitely handle such a task, while Iris meanwhile looks distrustfully, not believing if Arya was really capable of it. He explains to Iris that this blade is unlike any weapon she has encountered before. Clenching her jaw, Iris looks intently, her face hardening with determination. Looking at them, he contemplates the situation. Arya remains a mystery, but behind her stands the powerful Rainful family, and he understands that her participation in the training will ultimately make Iris grow faster. After the daytime training, they slowly return to the academy buildings. Iris calls him for tea. The sun is still shining, but he resolutely refuses, saying he will go to sleep. Her surprise is visible on her face, and she notes with a slight smile his childish habit of going to bed so early. He turned away and explained that his sensei was busy. Later, he wandered the empty streets of the city and mentally noted, due to the curfew, there was no one on the streets. His thought was instantly refuted by the fact that a figure materialized on the path ahead from an explosion of dark energy. In fact, there was someone else there. His gaze stopped on a torn armored glove lying in a fresh splash of blood on the cobblestones. A hooded figure stood nearby, a dark aura dissipating from the hand. A figure appeared before him, a young man with light hair peeking out from under the hood. He addressed him directly, pointed to the bloody scene, warned Alta that she would end the same way if she did not agree to cooperate, and said that he was the one who defeated Izumi. He did not restrain his mockery, sarcastically asking if Alta was really a teacher, then, casting a sharp glance, demanded to know if she was the same brazen creature who killed his comrades. The aggressive stance of the swordsman softened in surprise. He admitted he did not expect Alta to break through the barrier and approach from the front, and Alta calmly replied that he himself was surprised. Suddenly behind them, the main gates shattered into pieces with a crash. A new warrior landed and introduced himself as Fault Messina from the swordsman's gang. He declared that he came to kill Alta along with the princess the Holy Sword, and the hooded swordsman smiled, considering himself. In the abandoned courtyard, Fault Messina confronts a young boy in a dark cloak. With a mad smile, he briefly orders to draw the sword, and the boy is silent, his hand calmly resting on the hilt of his own weapon, carefully assessing the situation. The main character stared at the huge, segmented weapon of the opponent, and could not understand if it could even be called a sword. Fault was focused on something else, demanding to know where that girl was, then declared that after finishing with the boy, he would also kill the princess of the sacred sword. In response, the boy simply apologized. The swordsman let out a short, sharp laugh. I am used to the boy asking him about such things so easily. Entertainment disappears, replaced by rage. With a powerful swing, he spun the weapon and growled at the boy not to try to surpass him. Suddenly, the segments exploded forward, stretching like a chain with incredible speed, and caught the hero by surprise. He reacts instantly, twisting his body, and barely avoids the deadly blade that elongates. He soars into the air and completely deflects the attack. During the movement, he examines the opponent's weapon and understands its true nature, a blade that extends. He realizes that keeping distance is pointless and decides to force close combat. Rushing forward, he notices the unusual construction of the weapon. It consists of segments. Tax Fault laughed maliciously, confirming that the weapon is called Centipede. The segmented blade slides through the air, forming an almost impenetrable barrier. The hero understands that magical power controls its flowing, snake-like movements. Fault taunts him, ordering the boy to draw his blade. In response, he draws his own weapon, presents the blade, names himself Alta Schweitz and his sword Blue Shell Sword, a family heirloom, and by this declares that he is going into battle. His opponent's face twisted into a mask of mad delight, full of demands for Alta to give him plenty of entertainment with. With a roar, he releases the centipede. A massive segmented blade crashes down on Alta with a rumble. Alta dodges the blow, but the relentless attack keeps him at a distance. He realizes he cannot get closer. The opponent is strangely cautious, and attempts to cut the threads connecting the blade's segments are futile. The very fact mockingly confirms this. He finally reveals the secret of his weapon's strength. The threads are woven from dragon hair, the strongest of all monster materials, and to make them even more durable, he infuses them with his own magic. Alta processes this information and feels what a serious challenge it is. He concludes that this will be a prolonged battle, but his opponent has no intention to wait and roars, accelerating his attacks. He does not retreat while the segmented blade lashes the air, coils, and strikes like a metal serpent. Fault Misinta, with a wild smile, spins the weapon, forcing the opponent to only defend under overwhelming pressure. The force of the strike sparks as Alta's sword repeatedly clashes with the lightning-fast segments of the fiery centipede. Despite the continuous barrage, he calmly assesses the situation. Rayleigh notes to himself what a vile weapon it is, and that most likely the repair costs for the training ground will be deducted from his salary. The opponent boasts, claiming that he is leading the attack, but looks confused and aloud wonders how Alta manages to repel this onslaught. He thought, although he pities the opponent, these attacks will not touch him. Quiet confidence in the whine of rage that roars at him to stop fooling around. He feels he is pushing with all his might, but does not understand why his attacks do not break through. In response, Alta simply says he does not want his opponent to become even more uncontrollable. He plants his foot on the ground and adds that it is time to get down to business. Suddenly, Fault's face changes, from irritation to wide-eyed shock, then twists into a triumphant, almost mannequin-like smile. He roared, confident he finally found a gap, and shouted, "I've caught you." He swung his weapon, a chain of metal segments wildly whipping with manic pleasure. The links broke through the stone floor, but his opponent, Alta, moved with unnatural calm, standing directly in the path of the attack. The chain crashed down on him, smashing the ground, and stone fragments flew in all directions. But the cry of pain that followed was not from Alta's. Fault froze in horror as his own hand crumbled into black powder, flesh and bones simply vanished. He howled in pain and disbelief, while Alta, completely unharmed, stood over him, his voice cold with rage as he demanded to know how Fault dared to do that. His weapon, the centipede, suddenly became immobilized, and Fault could not understand it. It could not be that Alta cut the magical thread controlling it. From his place on the ground, Alta raised his eyes, and a quiet satisfaction appeared on his face. He was convinced that his plan had finally worked. He began to tell about the true nature of his power. His blue shell sword had a built-in magical effect, and since Fault's blade moved, passing magical power through itself, Alta's sword was the perfect counter. He explained that every time his sword triggered, it accumulated false mana, a poison that neutralized magic and immobilized the target. Explanation completed, he pointed his blade at the defeated swordsman. "Fault Misinta," he proclaimed in a voice that left no room for objections, "you are under arrest." Fault stood stunned and silent. Alta explained that everything had dragged on so long simply because of the colossal length of his weapon, and added that now that he was subdued, she had many questions for him that needed answers. A weak, defiant laugh escaped his lips. "Alta, is it?" he croaked. Alta calmly advised him to stop resisting, warning that if he continued he would lose the other hand. Fault's gaze became even harsher, and a slight smile appeared on Alta's lips as he noticed the opponent's determination. "You are a knight, yes," he said. He pants, standing in a black puddle that was once his hand, but a challenge burns in his eyes. In a strangled voice, he says he is not yet defeated. He had not yet taken a step when his body exploded. Black liquid sprayed like a fountain over the cobblestones and stunned the witnesses. When the shock subsided a little, the young swordsman's gaze involuntarily rose to the neighboring roof, where against the sky stood a silhouetted figure radiating a barely noticeable aura. A mysterious figure in a dark robe with a hood and a strange mask looks down from his platform, and the one who meets the gaze is tense and ready, asking himself if this could be the third. Under the night sky, another figure in a cloak from the band of swordsmen steps opposite Alta, and he recognizes the familiar cloak. The attacker draws a shining orb, which suddenly explodes with a blinding flash of light. The light fades, the attacker lies dead on the cobblestones. Alta stands over the body and sees that the others have scattered. He assumes he was silenced, probably. This was a person so hated that no one would come to their aid. For a moment he wants to rush in pursuit, but a face splattered with his own blood finally strengthens the decision. He cannot risk moving away from Iris, even for another enemy. Casting aside any doubts, he approaches the academy dormitory and calls Iris, well aware that students are strictly forbidden to leave their rooms at this hour. The door opens, and Iris Ryan steps out a few steps, looking worried. She explains that she went outside to make up for the training time she missed earlier in the day. The explanation fades as she finally sees him clearly. The blood on his face widens her eyes, and suddenly she understands everything. Shocked, she asks if he is a knight, and he simply admits that he was exposed. After some time, the sharp tension finally eased, and the street fountain washed the blood from his face, while Iris sat on the nearby bench silently watching him. He turned to her, cloak thrown over his arm, and leaned back, revealing a simple white tunic, and said it was finally time to get acquainted. He was a first-class officer of the Order of the Black Knights of Sirius. Iris processed this and asked if he was the same one who 2 years ago was called the youngest knight, to which he confirmed and added that he was also her secret guardian at the academy. Harris Rainful, with a grim expression, contemplates this discovery and quietly whispers that now everything is clear. She understands that the academy must have known about the danger from the very beginning. She sits next to Alto on the bench and bitterly realizes the murder plan is not yet finished, and she is the only one who did not know. He turns to her and sincerely apologizes for not being able to tell her earlier. She quietly brushed off his apologies. "It's okay, it's your job," and in a hushed voice added that she was really being chased by a gang of swordsmen. Her consent quickly turns into a challenge. Her face sharpens. She insists that she does not even need a guard like that, and reminds him that Belsen died protecting her. Her thoughts rushed back to that conversation with Alta and Bel Trusso. In the memory, she asked Bel if he was acquainted with Alta. He said that Alta was the same one he fought and lost to in the final of the Kenjutsu tournament when he was 10, and Bel then added that after that Alta became a knight and a first-class officer. This news clearly shocked Iris. The memory fuels her anxiety, and now she trembles a little, repeats again that she was given a guard, and then turns to Alti and demands to know why he is so against it. He looks at her, confused by the question, and asks if something is wrong. Iris turns away, bewildered, realizing her mistake. For a moment she thought she would finally hear the reason for Bel's resistance, not Al's. Her face tightened with determination, and she firmly declared that she wanted to become a protector, just like her father Gallo Reinfeld. Hearing this name, Alto explained that, although he had never met her father personally, he knew him as the former commander of the Order of Sirius Black Knights, and Iris quietly confirmed that she knew him. She tells that her father, both the head of the family and a knight, was a protector of his people. To honor his will, she swears that she will not lose to anyone. Looking ahead, she says with renewed determination, if she is the target of the swordsman squad, she will face them directly, and adds that she doesn't mind if Alta goes with her to deal with them. He watches her and thinks that for a 15-year-old, her determination is impressive. Although she is a candidate for the crown, which explains her strength, he cannot shake the feeling that danger hovers around her. Deciding to dig deeper, he asked to clarify one thing. As far as he knows, the killer of her father has not yet been caught. His words hit the most painful spot, and Iris froze, her eyes wide open in shock. He presses further and asks directly, does she really need to become stronger to avenge her father's killer? Her bold mask crumbles. Lowering her eyes and with pain on her face, she quietly admits that she was only about 5 years old then. She recalls a dear childhood moment, how she adored training with the sword together with her father Gallo Reinfeld. When he returned from service, then the young girl shone with a smile, holding a training sword next to her tall father in armor. He was the strongest knight in the kingdom, and her eyes proud, and someone hard not to admire. She remembers running around their large estate, calling him, and impatiently waiting for training to begin. But this idol shattered in an instant when a sudden brutal attack erupted. In despair, her father covered her with his body, while a whirlwind of dark energy rose around them, and she only screamed his name in horror because he put her rescue above all else. That moment burned into her memory. Splashes of warm blood sprinkled her face, and her eyes were wide open with incomprehensible horror. After the devastating blow, her father lay fallen on the ground, nearby a broken sword, and above his fallen body loomed a shadowy figure. The figure spoke, his words dripping with contempt. He was bored that Gallo left a gap in the guard just to protect his daughter, calling her a little girl. He continued, saying that her father was spared, and then the killer made a chilling request that next time she entertain him instead of her father. Having said the last words, the man in the shadow turned and left, leaving the body of Gallo Rian in a pool of his own blood. The memory of that day remained a cruel, burning picture. the father's body lying among broken swords, and her own face a mask of pure horror, twisted in a silent, endless scream. We return to the present. That pain froze in an irritated grimace. While Alta watches, Iris confesses that she cannot recall the face of the killer. She goes on to say, even after 10 years, they still do not know who the killer is or where he might be, but she is unbreakable. She cannot give up the goal of becoming a knight who will surpass her father. Having said this, she turns to her instructor, the sensei, and uncertainty trembles in her voice. She asks him if revenge is not the wrong path for her. Her eyes open wide in despair. She insists on the question, her voice trembling. Isn't it right to avenge her father? He watched, his face unreadable, and admitted to himself that he was bad at reading others' feelings, and did not even guess how heavy the burden she carried was. His thoughts still raced. He promised to teach her, but never taught anything. Now he spins in his head what to say, because he knows this training she needs for revenge. Finally, he turns to her, the decision made, and he says that, in his opinion, it's okay. Her eyes open wide in surprise. A quiet awe escapes her lips as she processes his unexpected approval. On the training ground, Iris Rainful approaches Alti Schweitz and, with a voice trembling from uncertainty, asks if she can seek what torments her, and he simply answers, yes, pushing her to specify exactly what she wants for the sake of revenge. He passionately explains, to become stronger, a reason is needed, and it doesn't matter what kind. Whether it's protection like a knight's or strength for revenge, the motivation itself is important. He sees her inner conflict. She seems to have been sure that he would oppose her desire. If she considers it wrong, he says, then some part of herself thinks so, and this self-disgust and hesitation, he warns, hinder her growth as a swordswoman. The expression tightens tenses when she asks if she should simply give up the desire to avenge her father's killer. She understands his words as advice to bury this feeling deep inside, but he explains that ultimately the choice remains hers. Tension rises as he utters his main message. Swing for this with all your might. She must fully accept her motivation to become stronger, and this is what he really means. At his powerful statement, Iris falls silent. She bows her head, her face shaded by thoughts and inner struggle, and she cannot answer immediately. After a pause, his tone changes now. He speaks with the authoritative voice of a mentor, and says that as a teacher, he would advise her not to swing the sword for revenge. In the training courtyard, Iris stands opposite him with closed eyes. When she grips the hilt of her wooden sword, a dark, spiky aura begins to thicken around the blade, the physical embodiment of her turbulent determination. She swung the blade with new confidence, the steel cutting the air in an arc if she had to choose. She decided to take up the sword to protect those she loves. He watched her and suddenly realized, the most important thing for Iris is to cast away doubts. Indeed, she succeeded. Her blade now glowed with pure, bright light, and a triumphant relief spread across her face. She turned to him resolute, said she was not going to run away anywhere, and asked what he would do next, confessing that she had not guessed he was new. When he appeared, she decisively declared she was staying at the academy. He explained that he would stay too, but not as a guard. He would be her instructor. He barely smiled and added that she still needed his help. She was still inexperienced, and a teacher would be needed to deal with the sword gang. After a minute of hesitation, she reluctantly agreed to let him continue their training, and he accepted her decision with a joyful smile. When they were walking, he took the opportunity and asked her, "Why are you swinging the sword?" When she seemed surprised, he explained why he fights, because he wants to live a measured and carefree life, and this answer completely confused her. She burst out laughing, tightly closing her eyes from amusement, certain that the stated reason for the fight was just a joke. Step by step they went further, and she murmured to herself, "If I can become as strong as my sensei, and do it for myself, the path ahead will not seem difficult." He raised an eyebrow and asked if her motivation was childish, and she answered decisively, not at all. But his gaze is involuntarily drawn to the ravaged courtyards of the academy, and he mentally understands. With the two remaining members of the swordsman gang, this incident can no longer be hidden. Late at night, he stood alone, gazing at the academy from afar, and thought about the one who escaped, sincerely hoping that those who pursued him would be lucky. At that moment, a cry rang out. Someone noticed a figure in a hood fleeing through the dark courtyards. The figure rushes down a narrow alley, and hurried footsteps spark from the stone cobblestones. Their escape route was cut off. At the end of the alley stands Commander Lemir Owen, and all around a whole company of soldiers blocking any hope of breaking through. She looks down at the fugitive cornered with a confident smile and says that they were informed about a violator who was fleeing from the academy, so it must be him. She stood her ground, looking straight at the silent figure in the hood. One of her commanders shouted, "Commander," but she raised her hand and ordered him not to move. She would handle this herself. The figure responded not with words, but with a quiet chuckle, drawing a strange decorated sword hilt, and mockingly said that the commander herself had come out to greet them. As they spoke, the figure threw back the hood, revealing a woman with long pale hair and 3 dots on her forehead, Lemir narrowed her eyes in fury, recognizing the strange bladeless sword. She spat the name of that woman with contempt, a fistfight of the sword gang. Her voice dripped with poison as a fiery aura exploded around her. She directly accused Fiss and demanded to know if she was the one who killed her dear subordinate. The confrontation instantly erupted, bursting into waves of destructive energy that pierced the city street, shattering windows and splitting wooden structures. Amid the chaos, Fiss Meaden calmly admitted that she did not like feudal fights, although she acknowledged that raising a fuss was also a hassle. With a single wave of her hand, a dazzling blade of pure energy emerged from the previously empty hill. Two warriors rushed towards each other, their blades clashing in the center of the devastated street, with such force that the air trembled from the shockwaves. The soldiers were already preparing to advance when their commander growled for them to stop and not pursue. Lemir, who was in the skirmish, knew the danger. If the enemy unleashed the full power of that sword in the middle of the city, it would end in disaster. She stood firm and demanded a report from her people. The squad commander confirmed good news. Civilians were unharmed, and they had no losses either. But when the tip of her sword rang against the stone below, a wave of irritation washed over her. She quietly cursed under her breath and looked at the distant silhouette of Fiss Meaden standing among her soldiers. The next day, near the Firearms Academy, a notice was posted. After the public disclosure of the sword gang attack, the school was officially closed until further notice. At the school gates, Alta, as a teacher, dismissed the worried students, assuring them that Iris was fine and it was time for everyone to go home, while Arya stayed behind. Her face was filled with anxiety for Iris-sama. Meanwhile, Iris and Alta stood side by side on the balcony, silently watching the now empty schoolyard below. The silence was broken by the appearance of Arya. Iris suggested that she should also go home, but Alta intervened and said he would not leave Arya alone with the person who deceived her, and Arya categorically refused with a firm, resolute look. Arya returned to Iris and explained in a quiet voice that last night she forced Alta to tell her everything. Iris glanced at her, and a question arose in her mind whether it was the right thing to do. Everything became clear. Iris now knew that he was a knight. Lowering her eyes, she quietly apologized, but Arya quickly reassured her it's okay. I understood immediately that it would be so as soon as he was exposed, and also, she added with a smile, it means I can stay close to Iris. Support, it seems, hardened Iris. Her face hardened with determination, and she told Alta directly that although it might be hasty, they should start her training immediately. Arya exclaimed joyfully and with a self-satisfied smile noted that Iris finally managed to cut the leaf. This comment, clearly about the next stage of training, embarrassed and irritated Iris, and Arya just sighed contentedly, as if she had caught up with her friend in something. She was stunned when Arya suggested they arrange a duel. Everyone asks in unison, why not? He reminds that before his arrival they dueled every day, and adds that he himself would watch with interest. Iris blushed and did not know what to answer. At the very thought, her hesitation melted away, and with renewed determination, she draws her sword. The blade rang as it was drawn from the sheath. In the forest clearing, she takes a position opposite Arya, who responds with the same readiness. Alta stands at a distance and watches as the two prepare to begin. A shout, Arya rushes forward, starting a lightning-fast exchange of blows. Their blades clash in a blurred whirl of movement, steel ringing against steel. She intensifies the attack. Her movements are fast and precise. Finding a gap, she declares her victory as her blade finds the target. But Iris stands firm. Her sword deflects the blow. Arya's eyes widen in surprise. She realizes that in their previous duels this strike would have been decisive. The duel freezes. Their blades have locked in a tense confrontation. Arya is stunned, overwhelmed by Iris's unexpected strength and defense. She smiles brightly and asks if this means her victory, and Arya, with a look of quiet submission, admits that she has lost. In a gesture of sportsmanship, Arya extends her hand and gently strokes Iris's head, acknowledging that she has become a bit stronger than before. Her friendly gesture embarrassed Iris so much that she blushed and asked her to stop, and Arya explained that Iris always does this to her, and she just wanted to repay her to wake her from her usual drowsiness. While the head pats did not cease, Iris grumbled that they should not behave like this in front of the sensei, and from a few steps away, Alta watched their interaction with a thoughtful expression. He finally understood. The Sword Princess already had the perfect training partner, and Iris's ability to react to attacks from blind spots was a direct result of her sixth sense training. On her face was newly found confidence and sharp focus, shining like a star against her usual appearance. He thought that this was just one of the basic requirements to face him in a real fight, and believed that she had passed the first stage of training learning to avoid hidden attacks like his own invisible technique. He looked at Iris. She seemed to radiate new strength, and he realized this training was crucial. It would increase the chances of survival for such a stubborn girl as she was. He announced that it was time to move on to the next stage of training. Iris and Arya enthusiastically agreed. they were ready for what lay ahead. While they prepared, Arya could not take her eyes off the sword at his side. She asked if he was going to use it, and he explained that he would not fight with that weapon. Instead, another exquisite sword materialized in his hand, glowing with power. He told Iris that her only task was simply to block his attacks, which surprised her greatly. He says he will speed up and asks her to do everything possible to defend herself. Iris agrees with a determined look and places herself under his care for the time being. The duel begins instantly. Iris reacts lightning fast, raising her sword to block his first powerful strike. Their swords remained locked, and he mentally noted that this simple speed was a trifle for him. He explains that a simple one-on-one fight actually gives her an advantage, and immediately announces the start of the second stage. For speed, Iris's face tightens with concentration. She announces his next move, a series of 5 strikes. Iris loudly confirms just as the first strike hits the guard. He went on the offensive, summoned a blurred sword, and unleashed a lightning-fast 5-strike combo. Iris, focused and determined, met each blow with her own blade. Their blades clashed in the final loud collision. Catching her breath, Iris confirmed that this was truly the end of the sequence. She raised an eyebrow in surprise when he apologized and explained that he intended to go all the way. He quickly smiled and reassured her that her performance was quite enough to start. When their session ended, another student stepped forward. Arya Natria raised her hand and confidently declared that it was now her turn. She approached him, ready for her trial, all to prove that she handled the series of 3 strikes, and now suggested continuing to 5. Without hesitation, he launched an attack, releasing the same lightning-fast 5-strike combo on Arya. To Iris's surprise, who stood aside watching, Arya flawlessly blocked every strike. Flawless performance stunned Iris. She froze for a moment, covering her face with her hand in disbelief, regretted that Arya had once again outpaced her, and Arya, with a proud shrug, seemed to take pleasure in it. He carefully observed their reactions and explained what had happened. Arya defended so skillfully because she had seen that move before, but he still praised Iris. It was incredible that she managed without any preparation, and when he realized they were on the same level, the real training began. He threw down another challenge. He suggested that Iris and Arya attack him simultaneously. This proposal caught Iris by surprise, and she asked again if he really wanted them to attack at the same time. He confirmed his intentions with a confident smile, and added that even if 2 managed to oppose him, he didn't care, and with unwavering confidence declared that he would handle it. Their faces froze in stern determination. Arya, turning to her opponent, nudged her. "Let's do this, Iris. Confirm okay?" Iris nodded and gripped her sword tightly in her hand. The 2 students rushed forward and took positions on both sides of the mentor, who stood his ground. As they prepared to strike, a thought flashed through his mind. Watching people grow truly pleases him. He realized he did not hate teaching. On the contrary, being a teacher was quite good. The 3 froze on the brink of the clash, their faces filled with sharp concentration. After training, Alta praises his students for a good job and announces a 1-hour break. As he walks away, he thinks about how pleasant it is to help eager young people grow. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted by the voice of Commander Lemir Owen, who calls him. A serious conversation about further actions begins. In the reception room, she immediately asks about his hand, worried that one more move during the last fight could have cost him his hand, and Riley remarks that it is the price for spending so much time sitting at the table. He brushed off her concern, saying he was fine, but regretted that they ultimately failed to catch the target. Changing the subject, he advised her to drink less, to which she firmly refused. Ignoring his remark, Lemir immediately gets down to business. He shows a photo of their previous enemy Fismeden and announces that they have now found 2 more key members of the sword gang. She explains in detail that, relying on records and eyewitness testimonies about another attacker, a swordswoman with a sword without a blade, she could only notice a barely visible trajectory trace and admits to Alta that she could not even guess what those attacks were like. Lemir slides 2 profiles. The first, Adelgratz, a former mercenary from the war fronts, now number 1 and the strongest member of the sword gang. The second, Fismeden, the wielder of the bladeless sword, the one who cut off her hand and killed Folt, who is considered number 2 in the gang. Alta reviews the documents and cannot understand why such a strong team took on a 15-year-old girl, even if she is a candidate for ruler. She apologizes for this situation and suggests that the sword gang are simply killers who live for battle. Most likely their motive is connected to the fact that Iris Rainful bears the most powerful title, the Sword Princess, as people call her. Lemir puts a full stop in the briefing and says that this is all the information she has now, announcing, "It's time to come up with a plan for the future." Alta tore herself away from the documents, raised her eyes, and is ready to talk about her findings and start planning. Settling in the exquisitely furnished room and not taking his eyes off the window, he called out to make sure Arya was there. From outside the window, Arya Natria peeked inside, amazed that he sensed her presence when no one else ever did. Commander Owen, standing nearby, shuddered and admitted that she had not noticed the girl at all, and then he asked the commander to do something for him, at least for now. Now inside, Arya knelt by the window. He asked what she was doing there, and admitted himself that it was strange how he had not noticed her for so long, and she explained that she had seen him with the commander. She told in detail that Iris had taken an interest, and that pushed her to investigate, and he immediately insisted that she not reveal what she had learned. And then, when Iris Reinful appeared at the door, Arya beckoned her to enter to his great surprise. When everyone finally gathered in the room, Commander Owen soberly greeted Lady Reinful, saying they had not seen each other for a long time, and Iris in turn responded with a nod. Without unnecessary words, Iris asked directly whether the injury to the commander was caused by the gang of swordsmen. Lemir Owen looked away, grimaced in pain, and apologized, saying it was a shameful matter and her duties had not allowed her to truly mourn it. He took over the briefing and, addressing the assembled squad, said that only the sword gangs remained two of the strongest killers. Among the grim Black Knights, only he could oppose them, but warned that no one knows when or how the enemy will strike again. Commander Owen instantly jumped out to meet him and shouted his name in anger. She feels that Iris already knows he is a knight. Retreating, he can only confirm that this is so. Distracted from the commander's anger, he turns his gaze to Iris, her face darkened, and directly asks what she intends to do now. She answered with calm but unwavering determination, addressing the commander. First of all, she declared that she seeks to limit further damage and protect the members of the order, and the commander listens. Her face becomes sterner. With growing determination, Iris lays out her plan, to lure the enemy to a place where no civilian will be harmed, and says that they should consider her the bait. Commander lowers his eyes, his voice softening slightly. He apologizes for the failure of the order that led to such a proposal, and admits that he was touched that Iris is still willing to cooperate with them. A brief moment of modesty instantly disappears, replaced by a fierce gaze. She shouts that she completely disagrees with this plan. The commander's refusal hung in the air, and he clearly felt the difficult situation he was in. He could not tell Iris that he infiltrated there disguised as an instructor, and he could not tell her the whole truth because the commander insisted that she stay out of it. Everything becomes clear. He understands that the only way forward is for Iris herself to convince the commander to accept her strategy. He looked at Commander Owen with firm determination, and answering her question, declared that he had already chosen to become a knight in the future. Inspired by his resolve, Iris Reinful stood unwavering, her voice ringing confidently. She was not afraid to give her life to protect others, and if someone was ready to sacrifice themselves for her, then, she believed, it should be enough that only she would be the victim. Commander Owen froze, stunned by the passionate statement of the young woman. He immediately asked her not to say such words. He explained that if she died, the sacrifices of those who gave their lives to protect her would be in vain. He insisted that people are made for life, and that he himself was not going to die. Determination hardened on her face. "That is exactly why I will fight," Iris declared, her gaze unwavering as Commander Owen watched her. Hearing this, her friends rushed forward to support her. Arya Natria refused to leave her alone in battle, and another friend instantly caught this determination. The sudden intervention stunned Commander Owen. He sharply asked who they were, and Iris began to explain that one of them was from the Rainful family. The girl with braids proudly introduced herself as Arya Natria, jokingly praising her melodious name. She hugged Iris and declared that she was like family to her, so protecting her was a given, and Alta quietly told the commander that many of her students were true heroes, but these two were a special case. Then he turned his gaze to the two girls, and, already convinced of their skill with the sword, inquired whether either of them possessed any special magic. He and Commander Owen watch as Iris's friends demonstrate their abilities. One releases crackling lightning bolts, and the other, Arya, creates swirling dark energy, and he realizes that this is exactly the kind of power he needs. Returning to the commander with a confident smile, he said that the girls clearly had enough strength to work with him, solemnly accepted Iris's offer, and announced that he would take on the band of swordsmen. Commander Owen's face hardened, and she sharply replied that such a plan was unacceptable for a person in the position of knight commander nearby. Iris listened with anxiety in her eyes. Her stern face softened a little as she continued. After everything was explained to her so convincingly, she said she could not simply stop a person so ready for their action. Hearing this, Arya's face lit up. She warmly thanked the commander and exclaimed that among everyone, she was the most humane. The plan was agreed upon. He moved on to tactics and addressed the commander directly. The attack could happen as soon as tomorrow, so they would spread the rumor that Iris had been moved to his safer location. Owen agreed and said this would buy them a few days. Commander Owen gave the final orders. The decisive day of the bait operation would be next Saturday, and until then she ordered everyone to be ready. Iris's companion responded resolutely, "Yes." He turned his attention to Iris and calmly asked if she would go on a date with him. The question completely froze her. Her face flushed with a blush. She stammered and could not answer anything. She apologized, arranged to meet in an hour, and closed the door behind her. As she left, Arya began to explain the plan in detail. On Saturday, she explained, they would secretly lure the enemy out of hiding, pretending to be two ordinary children simply walking together. This meant that Iris would have to go on a date with Alta-sensei. The word date struck Iris like an electric shock. She doubted whether it was necessary, but Arya skillfully explained. The enemy did not know their identities, so the pretense had to be believable. Embarrassed, Iris tried to justify it, insisting that it was just part of the plan, and Alta's comment was just a joke, and she scolded herself not to worry, although her lack of experience in such matters clearly made her nervous. Seeing her friends suffering, Arya suggested a simple solution, saying it was nothing terrible if she just pretended, then asked Iris what she thought, leaving the decision to her. She walked alone, deep in thought, striving to become a knight with a power worthy of the title Princess of the Holy Sword, and always believed she had no time for personal life or romance. That is why she understood so little about such things. The burden of duties and this unexpected new role weighed on her, and she silently dreamed of at least a moment of peace. Standing before the Great Arch, Commander Lemir Owen notes the absurdity of these circumstances, and aloud contemplates going on a date with a girl from the senior school amid such tension. He turned to Alta Schweitz with a sly smile and said he was not so innocent himself, irritably added that he was doing it for the plan, and asked if she had ever paid attention to him before. Alexander quietly sighs, admitting that although she was reliable, this defeat was a consequence of her overconfidence, and directly tells Alta that he chose the wrong enemy. Alta suddenly realized. He understood that from the very beginning of the mission, she planned to make him overly protect the sword Holy Princess Iris Reinfeld. Her expression becomes firm as she officially addresses him, First Officer Alta Schweitz, and throws a direct question: can we protect Lady Reinfeld from this organization? He answers unwaveringly, assuring that, of course, he can, explains that a leader must play his role, stand straight and proud, but adds a condition. For this trouble, he will take an additional 30 of the salary. The stern expression melts into a warm smile, and she admits she likes this side of him. Nearby Belt Trousseau laughs and adds that Iris is the daughter of the previous Commander Gallo, and Alta was once under his care. And jokingly suggests going on a date as soon as the mission is over. Alta, embarrassed, protests that the age difference will be a problem, and asks if she is too harsh on him, while Lemir quickly changes the subject and asks about the investigation who hired the sword pistol. Although she roughly knew who was behind the attacks, she could not find solid evidence, and Alto agreed it must be someone who cannot be challenged lightly. The investigation led to one powerful figure, Zil Tillich, and it revealed that he is the son of King William Tillich, ruler of their own kingdom of Galdia. He opened his eyes wide and comprehended the news. The prince of their country was targeting Iris, and he realized that this was a very significant name to be involved. Under the towering spires of the royal castle, a council was in full swing. Two cloaked figures approached the checkpoint, and the palace guard ordered them to stop and remove their masks, but before they could comply, another guard intervened and told his comrade to wait. He apologized to the silent, masked people for the rudeness and explained to his partner that they were the prince's personal guards. They were let in. Two figures stood before the man seated in the grand hall, and he coldly addressed them, saying that if possible, it would be better for them not to come to him here. Prince Zil Tillich continued the report, and without much alarm, said that the band of swordsmen was considered capable of killing anyone for the right price, even a sword saint. Although two of them had already been neutralized, he saw no reason for concern, and even seemed to smile at the fact that they were troubled by a mere 12-year-old boy. The prince fiercely ordered the guards to be silent. One of them had just asked about the whereabouts of the princess the sword saint, but the prince, enraged, shouted that the vile one from those serious black knights refused to share any information. His anger grew from an old shame. He still remembered how that brat humiliated him at the last tournament, so he firmly ordered the guards, next time you encounter her, finish off the holy sword princess. His cruel smile stretched across his face as he added one more vile detail to the order. Their goal was not just to kill her, they must make her feel the horror of death as intensely as possible before killing her. Turning away from the guards, he declared that peace and quiet bored him and revealed his ambitions. As soon as she dies, just like her father, he will become the next king of the country with such power that he can use it for good. His ambitions go far beyond one country. He openly proclaims that he wants to become the king who will rule the entire continent. Turning back to his subordinates, he reminds them that he sent them to protect him and expects them to properly fulfill their duty. Having received the orders, two masked men silently stand on the cliff and look at the spacious courtyard of the castle below. Somewhere else, two figures discuss the nature of the prince. a stocky man with a white beard, stated that he always knew Prince Zil was unfit to be king, but this weakness made him easy to control, and the leader with long hair seemed to agree. The leader agrees, confirming the conclusion. The bearded executor adds that if a person like Prince Zil ascends the throne, it will inevitably cause a great rebellion across the continent. A smile blooms on the leader's face. He sees an opportunity in this chaos, and the continent will become an ideal and pleasant hunting ground for their group. The leader of the swordsman gang stood in the cave, and looking at his companion, grimly admitted that losing two before the hunt's end was an unforeseen loss. Azuma's death was a pointless loss because, unlike Folt, he had his own worthy traits. This was said by his great gray-haired companion. After all, he was tasked with caring for the Holy Sword Princess. He pondered her fate, a poor girl from a noble family, destined to become king, who did not even try to resist. The leader noticed with surprise that the subordinate, a large man, was looking at her with obvious interest. He simply said there was an important reason for that, and seriousness was felt in his tone. The conversation suddenly broke off when a knight in full armor appeared and called the large man by name Swordgang's Adelgrats. He was not alone. Knight Beltruso stood at the head of a squad of soldiers who tightly surrounded two members of the sword gang. He raised his voice and sternly announced that he was taking them into custody. In response, Adelgrats dramatically drew his huge, curved blade, and the leader of the swordsman gang calmly ordered him to join, suggesting they free the unfortunate girl together. His face twisted into a wild grin. He glanced at the gathered knights and contemptuously called them unlucky scoundrels. The scene changes. On a day considered Saturday, Alto Shvate stands ready, hand on the hilt of the sword pressed to the slope. He is told that the destination is secured, and knights are on guard around the perimeter. He replies, "I am ready to go." He stood at the foot of the stone structure and thought about Iris's safety. He was confident that no matter what worst happened, she could fully stand against the swordsman gang, and suddenly a voice from above apologized for the delay. The voice belonged to Iris. She appeared not in uniform, but in simple clothes. She explained that persuading Arya was difficult and took a lot of time. He asked if there was any problem, but smiled and said it was nice to see her in different attire and that it suited her. Iris, embarrassed, stumbled over her words and whispered, "Thank you." Just then Arya Natria appeared behind Iris in a dark ceremonial uniform, politely greeted her sensei with "good morning," then turned to Iris with a determined expression and announced that it was time to set off. His gaze lingered on Arya's outfit. He noticed her posture and how tightly the uniform fit, and instantly guessed that she had a weapon hidden under her clothes. When the three moved forward, Arya asked irritably why she was dragged along if she was told she was only here to help with the organization. Alto explained that he had no other clothes, only knight's armor and a robe. Iris, on the other hand, looked happy, cheerfully saying that it was all right and calling it a date for three. He quietly laughed at the word Iris, imagining himself carrying flowers in both hands. This only angered Arya more, who shouted in protest at her sensei, and Iris's face became serious. She intervened and said that if Arya could not go with them, then she would not go either. The cheerful mood instantly disappeared. His face hardened. He raised one finger and silenced them, sternly warning both girls not to overdo it. After all, he explained, everything had changed, and now there was a real chance of dying from a single attack. His words hung in the air. Iris looked worried. How could he say something so grim so easily? Arya, however, met the warning with determination and simply said, "All right." As they prepared to set off, Iris turned to Arya with a worried face and ordered, "If it becomes dangerous, run immediately." But Arya stood firm and declared that she was the target of the swordsman gang and was not going to just retreat. Her face hardened, and she quietly whispered a grim vow to cut down everyone hunting Iris. Her quiet muttering caught Iris's attention. She asked what that was, but Arya waved it off as nothing. Then Iris turned to Alta and asked him to be careful as well. Her words caught him by surprise. Suddenly he realized that he had not felt anyone truly worried about him for a long time. He composed himself and calmly outlined the next step of their plan. Since the final point was already known, he suggested making a detour to get into the enemy's sight and asked the girls if there was a place they wanted to go. As soon as this was offered to her, Iris seemed to shine. She eagerly asked to go buy clothes, and everyone gladly agreed. He turned to Arya and asked if she knew any shops. Arya nodded. She had a few in mind and agreed to lead them. Having determined the destination, the three stepped onto the bustling city street, teeming with merchants and buyers, and the plan to tame the swordsman gang officially began. The trio approaches a noisy, though closed, shop, its entrance brightly lit against the evening street. Nearby, Iris and Arya immediately get to work, holding a lacy white shirt up to the tired altar. Iris says it suits him and comes in other colors, while Arya thoughtfully suggests that another color would be better. Arya, surprised, calls him Sensei, and Iris quickly explains it's just a nickname for Alta. She looks at him for confirmation, and he only mumbles that they just came to buy clothes. She leans closer, smiles gently, and says she heard he has no other clothes besides robes, asking if he would mind if she picked out a few things for him. Without waiting for an answer, she confidently states that he can trust her with this, adding that she will also pick a few things for Arya. Alta can only sign the resignation. They stand frozen between the two girls, who giggle. It's clear they feel awkward, but all for the sake of their plans. The deal continues. Arya shows a lush black dress with a hood and cat ears and asks his opinion. He just shrugs and says, "Isn't that for girls?" Dismissing Arya's advice, he notices Iris holding a more practical military uniform, decides it suits her, and says it's a good choice, but Iris indignantly reproaches him for not even looking carefully, while Arya in the background pouts her suggestion was rejected. She, with a slight blush, announces she is going to the cashier to pay for the purchases. Alta, holding his choice, sincerely says he is truly glad for the clothes she picked out for him, believing that this will be quite enough. She watches as she walks away, thinking that in her new outfit she finally looks like an ordinary 15-year-old girl. He, meanwhile, thinks that her classmates would definitely be surprised to see her like this. After leaving the store, he saw Iris and Arya waiting, and the memory of their first meeting surged. One serious, like a noble girl, the other seemed carefree, and he silently realized that since then they had both come a long way. He turns to him and asks where Iris is, and he gestures toward the shop and says that Iris is still behind the counter. She does not take her eyes off him and asks if he cares for Iris, and Alta replies formally. As a knight, he intends to protect the one he accompanies. She instantly rejected his explanation, saying that this is not what she means. Embarrassed, he offered another reason that he is her mentor, but Arya rejected that too. Her face hardened. Arya decisively says, "I protect Iris simply because she is who she is, and this," she says, "is the main difference between her and Alta." She says that Iris strives to protect everyone, Arya, Alta, and everyone else. It is this desire to sacrifice herself. Arya confesses with a troubled look that this frightens her terribly. She finishes her thought and decisively says, "That is why I am going to protect Iris," and then implores Alta, as her teacher, to also take care of her protection. Just at that moment, Iris comes out of the store and loudly says that everything is ready, and Alta sincerely thanks her for her patience. As the two girls walk ahead, Iris cheerfully says that she enjoyed the walk, and he keeps turning Arya's words over in his mind. The request to focus on her protection is hard for him to accept. He understands her hint. Even if Arya herself is in danger, Iris must come first. He is pierced by remorse how rude it was to consider her a simpleton. Even if Arya does not say it, he knows that he is dear. His duty is clear. He is Iris's guardian. Even if Arya is taken hostage, Iris's life must come first. The group approaches the field of ancient ruins, crumbling. Arya playfully jumps over broken columns. Iris smiles and says she is here for the first time, and Alta adds that he has been here before on duty. He explains the reason for his previous visits, and his expression hardens slightly. It is known that this place is a refuge for bandits. Suddenly it dawns on him. He wondered why there were no attacks in the city from his squad of swordsmen, but now everything becomes clear. He does not feel any specific presence, yet he senses their gazes upon them. They have been lured into a trap. He notices Iris's anxiety and asks if she is worried. She quietly admits that she is. His face hardens with determination. He understands that this is the perfect place to confront the band of swordsmen, and that their attack is inevitable. Meanwhile, Arya is overwhelmed with fear. She feels responsible for dragging her friends into this deadly situation, and fears they may not survive what is coming. Suddenly it occurs to him, although he and Arya have some experience in life-and-death battles, for Iris this is the first real fight for her own life. As if sensing his thoughts, Iris looks at him with despair and asks how to become as strong as he is. She admits she wants to be able to proclaim herself the princess of the Sword Saint, before whom the band could not stand, but she lacks confidence. He tells her directly that she is already strong, emphasizing that she could have done nothing and left this matter to the order, but instead chose to fight. His words leave her stunned. He continues, explaining that there is a difference between recklessness and courage, and he believes the path she has chosen is true courage. With a reassuring smile, he tells her that if she thinks this is a bad idea, she can leave everything to him, because that is exactly why he is here. A wave of relief washes over Iris, and she blooms with a bright smile. She sincerely thanks him and apologizes for a moment of weakness. She turns away from Alta and firmly states that everything is fine now. He looks at her, unsure if she intends to fight alone, and a doubt flashes through his mind whether he truly lacks faith in her abilities. He looks away and with a searching eye scans the ruined yard. Arya is gone, and he gets the thought that she has already left, hiding. Iris, noticing her friend's absence, calls her name in confusion. He quickly understands the situation. Arya found him first. a grim determination is on her face, and she decides to focus solely on protecting Iris. Hiding behind a crumbling pillar, she admits that Iris might really manage, but will still worry. Alto insisted that they split up and search for the enemy separately, considering it the best option for her. Iris, however, categorically refused and assured him that she always knows where he is, so there is no need to worry. He doubts her decision and says that the enemies are most likely exactly where Arya is. Iris, with a radiant and confident face, confirms her choice without any hesitation. A few minutes ago, the leader of Kinkakushu, Fizmaiden, was sitting in a high position, intently watching the students, was sure they were trying to lure them into a trust. Standing next to the formidable Edelgrats, Fist does not hide his surprise. They expected the students to run and hide, but instead found a prepared battlefield, and Fist notices with interest that the princess, Holy Sword, seems unarmed. Executioner Kinkakushu, Edelgrats, smiled ominously, baring sharp teeth, noticed the students' courage, and said he would fight them personally just as they apparently wanted. Somewhere in the ruins of Alta stands next to the leader Kinkakushu Fizmaiden. He scans the space strewn with debris and asks where the other is heading. In response, Fizmaiden instantly and smoothly turns around, their long light hair swirling in the air as they react to an invisible threat. A city of daggers tore through the air, but Fizmaiden's weapon met them. Projectiles flew off, deflected by a sharp metal blade. The attack came from Arya Natria, standing ready in the distance, and she watches as her strike is easily parried from a higher point on the wall of the Alta ruins. Someone observes this clash. When the daggers rained down, Edelgrat responded with fists and said he had long wondered why they got involved in the affairs of the sword-bearing princess on that youngest night, and he would never have thought they would try to outdo Kinkakushi. Her first attack was repelled, and Arya's face tightened. She demands to know if they are mercenaries, then sharply asks what they did to Iris. Sitting high above, Alta looks down at the two leaders of Kinkakushu, sees that it seems they are alone here, then decisively declares that if she kills them both right here the conflict will end, and asks if she is right. Everyone turned their gaze to the girl with two ponytails, first demanding to know who she was, then sharply reproaching the Edelgrats for getting carried away at such a critical moment. The massive guard just snorted in amusement and praised the excellent reconnaissance of their invisible enemies, while below Arya tightly clenched her knives, her face hardening with determination. In response, a dark feathered aura bursts from behind Arya, forming a cloak. Her simple knives transform into luxurious curved blades. Alta calls her name from above with alarm. Iris looks worried. The leaders of Kinkakushu watch this sudden transformation, and one of them calls her with one chilling word, killer, and on Arya's face is pure shock, as if she does not control the power now manifesting through her. The memory flows alive and clear, as if it happened yesterday. Rain falls in torrents on the dark roofs of the city, a constant oppressive hum. Under that downpour, a small trembling girl with light hair pressed herself against a stone wall alone, soaked to the bone, while figures with umbrellas pass by without even glancing. A gentle voice breaks the solitude. Under a bright yellow umbrella approaches a young girl, Iris Rainful, with a worried expression. She asks the trembling child what she is doing here, and if she is all right. She raises her head, her red eyes meet Iris's gentle gaze. Iris smiles, introduces herself and asks the other's name, and after a pause the girl quietly says, Natria. Suddenly everything returns to the present. Arya Natria is on guard, standing opposite two members of Kinkakushu, and their leader Fizmaiden disdainfully smiles and reproachfully says what boldness it is to call them killers in their presence. The cheerfulness at this meeting instantly fades and is replaced by cold determination. They declare Arya a threat that cannot be left behind, and pass a death sentence on her. Arya's eyes widen in horror at this sudden desire to kill. Without warning, fists collide in a lunge. The body blurs in a flow of movement. Arya pushes back, barely dodging a devastating blow that shattered the stone ruins where she stood a minute ago. She spins in the air, barely dodging a series of invisible strikes tearing the stone floor apart. The leader of Kinkakushu watches calmly and notes her impressive instincts. This strange manner of attack was not entirely unfamiliar. Iris Ryan sprang into a dizzying somersault to remember what she had heard about this enemy. His sword was exactly as the rumors said. Amid the ruins stood the leader, holding in his hands the source of this attack, Threadblade. Another barrage of invisible attacks rushed forward. Although Arya did not see them with her eyes, she clearly felt their threatening presence cutting through the air. Deciding to fight back, she threw a small knife at the opponent, but Iris knew it was pointless. Throwing something directly at this person made no sense. Harris turned out to be right. The leader of Kinkakushu simply raised his hand and summoned a swirling vortex of shadows, a manifestation of spatial magic. The dark abyss instantly swallowed the thrown knife, and it vanished without a trace. Arya was caught off guard in the next moment. A long, sturdy blade appeared in the leader's hand, lunging forward with a deadly intent. The leader calmly notes that attacking from a blind spot at such speed is futile against their spatial magic. Arya looks on distrustfully, stunned by how easily the opponent dodged. Refusing to yield, she unleashes a storm of daggers, asking if this new attack can be stopped. In response, her opponent stands calmly, while dozens of dark whirlwinds materialize in the air around them, swirling. Whirlwinds instantly swallow every blade, and the attack comes to nothing. She is breathing heavily, sweat is running down her forehead, and a feeling of helplessness overwhelms her. Her opponent, completely unharmed, mockingly asks if she has finished the attack. A few sharp clicks and the stolen daggers reappear, now uselessly stuck in the ground around the leader. Observing the one-sided clash, Alter recalls Iris's strange behavior earlier that day, his face petrified with bitter realization, must kill this enemy. Meanwhile, Arya, acknowledging the opponent's immense strength, grits her teeth and remains steadfast in her resolve. Her determination is fueled by precious memory, the smiling face of Iris Rainful. She fights for the girl who accepted her as her own, for the one who gave her the very name she bears. But when she gathers her courage, a new threat emerges from the shadows behind. Enforcer Aethelgratz raises his massive blade, preparing to strike her from behind. The Punisher lowered his gigantic blade, shouting that there was no time, and the attack from behind completely caught Arya by surprise. She instantly realized that avoiding this was impossible. The very speed and force of the ambush left her no room to maneuver. But just as the blow was about to land, a dazzling flash of steel intercepted the massive weapon. Iris Rainful stood between them, her own blade holding back the brutal assault of the guard. The performer shouted, his pressure suddenly stopped. Iris stood firm, and their swords clashed. Her gaze fell on her friend lying on the ground, and with anxiety in her voice, Iris turned to Arya and asked why she always exposes herself to such dangers. She turned to the enemy, her gaze sharpened and became icy. She apologized for frightening Arya, but assured that everything was now under control. Two fighters froze in a tense confrontation. The brutal smile of the thug met the unwavering, resolute gaze of Iris. She looked at her friend Ari from the side with relief and despair at the same time, recognizing in this the usual heroic recklessness of Iris. In a moment, she felt a familiar presence and understood that their teacher was also approaching. On the neighboring clearing, the performer Adelgrads approached his leader Fismeden and said that he would deal with the immediate threat himself, and entrusted the matter of Alta Schweitz to Fis. He adds a stern warning to Fis: any extra help is not needed. Fis, unperturbed, simply closes his eyes and quietly wishes luck with. The plan is agreed upon, and Adelgratz again rushes into the thick of the battle, while Iris calls Arya. A massive performer with a curved blade strikes down a blurred lunge directly at his target. The attack is repelled, but through the tension a voice breaks through. Alta is nearby calling a comrade to retreat and regroup, but a deeper voice interrupts him and addresses the Holy Sword Princess directly. Long time no see, Iris Rainful, and Iris's eyes widen in recognition. It is the voice of Adelgratz, standing before the bewildered Arya Natria. She only utters a sound of confusion, looking up at this formidable figure. The confusion recedes, gradually turning into growing horror. She fully recognizes his voice, and the memory of his presence chills her to the bone. The performer ignores Arya. His entire gaze is fixed on Iris. He recalls her new title, Holy Sword Princess, and sharply asks, "Have you managed to surpass your father?" His words hit the most painful spot. Iris's restraint crumbles. Her face becomes a mask of shock as the memory of their brutal clash floods her mind, the screech of metal on metal, and the overwhelming force of his attack. Iris stood stunned, but the dark energy did not come from her. But from Arya, her face shifted from shock to a mask of pure rage. A complex cracking symbol appeared before her, and with eyes full of anger and distrust, she pointed at Adelgratz and in a torn, broken voice said, "He killed her father." On the forest clearing, the confrontation with the enforcer Kinkakushu reached a boiling point. As the Holy Sword Princess, Iris Rainful begins to radiate a powerful aura, and her friend Arya crouches nearby and desperately shouts for her to calm down. In vain, Arya looks with wide-open eyes. Realizing that everything is in vain, Iris explodes. Energy crackles around Iris, and her face contorts with pure rage. She measured the huge warrior with her gaze and declared that she must avenge her father, then forced herself to smile, noticing how incredible her power was, and he, smiling, remarked that he was sure she would entertain him. A stream of dark energy burst from her at his sneer, wildly swirling around her fragile body, and Arya screamed her name in horror. One controlled surge of power too much, and Iris screams in pain as she is brutally thrown back through the trees. From afar, Alta Schweitz watches this chaos with a tense, vigilant gaze. She sees Iris on the ground. Her rage seems to have subsided. Arya looks anxiously as Iris turns her head, her face softens, and she calls her teacher Schweitz-sensei. Then she turns to her friend, apologizes to Arya for getting so upset, and assures her that everything is fine now. She pulls herself together, looks the thug in the face again, and firmly says she is not going to entertain him. The massive man, seemingly disappointed, wipes his mouth and says that he is getting bored. It blazes with fury as the boy in the cloak calls the Kinkakushu leader by name, and Fis, standing at a distance, calmly responds to the call. The reply came from behind a huge, shimmering energy grid, a barrier of threads that suddenly grew between the students and their pursuers. It stands confidently before the glowing lattice and says that this is a barrier that no one has ever broken through. One touch, they say, in death is inevitable. Then they turned their attention to the boy, who mockingly dismissed the idea that a simple wall of threads could stop them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the clearing, Adelgratz notices Iris and Arya, complains that he had to give up the boy he so wanted to fight, and now demands that these two girls entertain him for at least a minute. In response, Iris's sword sparkled, crackled with live electricity, and wrapped in purple arcs of lightning. She swore on this sword left to her by her father, Gallo Rainful, and the enforcer's eyes slightly widened. He recognized the weapon. Her resolve hardened. She loudly declares that, as the Holy Sword Princess, she will be the one to defeat him. The giant warrior mockingly accepts her challenge and gestures to move forward. Standing by the barrier, Fis watches as the confrontation begins, with a cruel smile on her lips, and quietly whispers to the boy next to her that two girls will die. The hero, sword at the ready, addressed the distant leader Kinkakushu and declared that he would defeat her, adding that since Iris had already dared to call herself the Princess of the Holy Sword, he leaves this personal fight to her. From the side of the barrier, Iris blushed and awkwardly asked him not to use that title. His words elicited a cold response from the shadowy figure. She called him a heartless boy, and looking disappointed, said she had hoped he would be more upset by this, but for now, that was all. Stepping into the light, she reveals her true face, a formidable warrior with long white hair and dark skin in luxurious battle attire, calling herself Fismedin of the Sword Gang, and solemnly announcing the start of their duel to the death. Without saying a word, she unleashes a storm of slashing strikes that tear through the air and rush across the distance between them. He watches the approaching onslaught, his gaze fixed and vigilant, preparing to observe her reaction and the nature of her power. The attack crashes down on him in an instant. A hailstorm, like invisible blades, tears the ground beneath his feet. The invisible assault continues, and he suddenly realizes that Fist does not hold a sword for this attack. She needs it neither for defense nor for striking. In response, a light barely glimmers at his fingertip. He prepares to manifest his power against the relentless barrage of attacks. He dodges through the storm of invisible strikes, the ground exploding where he stood moments before, and Fismedin closes the distance with blinding speed, her movements blurred as she intensifies the attack. Her assault quiets into a soft giggle. She asks if he is praising her and calls him a good boy, while he watches her intently, noting that her reaction is so incredible it's as if she can foresee the future. He instantly refines his analysis. This is not mere prediction. Her abilities are of a completely different order, a sixth sense that outpaces an ordinary person by light years. His eyes narrowed as it dawned on him. Despite her supernatural vigilance, he understood the critical weakness. She sees absolutely nothing. Sensing that he noticed, she quietly confirms he really noticed. Fismedin admits that she was once revered as a saint, but was tortured and has been blind ever since, adding that forcing Iris to bear the title of Princess of the Holy Sword must be very hard for the girl. She resolutely declares that she will free Iris from that role. He immediately challenges her. Does she mean freedom, as in killing her? A bitter smile crosses her face. She thinks that maybe someday the fighting will stop, but only if they continue freeing people who want to fight, one by one. His face hardened with cold certainty. With unwavering determination, he tells her that, as he suspected, her group is truly dishonest, and declares that he will kill her and that girl. He instantly sprang into action, breaking through a storm of dark, blade-sharp projectiles bursting from the ground, and was nearly impaled. The attack subsided, and a cloud of dust and debris slowly settled over the shattered courtyard. From the haze, Fismedin, filled with surprise and admiration, exclaims that his skill at almost completely disappearing is simply amazing. His senses scanned the surroundings, and he realized he was moving without even breathing. It was incredible control. Her sixth sense circled the space around her. She increasingly noticed with interest that he emitted no murderous intent at all. She frankly admits she is truly impressed. Although the previous girl could conceal her presence, she says he is even more skilled at it. At that moment of contemplation, he sharply closed the distance and stood right before her. Stunned by his sudden proximity, she demands to know, "Who are you?" He does not respond. In his head, there is only one principle: now speed decides everything. He strikes with blinding speed. His blade flashed past the defense of her fist. She gasped, her body twisted, the attack hit faster than her intuition could understand. The blade cuts deep and blood spurts from the cut on her shoulder. Fismedin releases a sharp, painful laugh. though he stands before her with a quiet, calm expression, saying that he is just a simple knife. From the blow, she pushes herself back and falls onto the stone floor, clutching the wound. She raises her eyes with a defiant smile and taunts him, "You did not finish me." On the floor, she strikes back. A colossal shadow hand emerges and rushes through the hall, aimed straight at him. He tenses, gripping the sword tightly with both hands, and suddenly a thought flashes. If he seriously responds to this attack, the sword will not survive the blow. He still rushes forward and plunges the sword into the heart of his shadow, construct a huge dark energy, scatters around the blade as he advances. Stunned by his raw power, Fistmaiden coughs up blood. She looks in disbelief. The thoughts do not fit. He is just a child, yet already possesses such overwhelming power. Looking up at the boy standing over her among the debris, she is suddenly enlightened. He is not a knight, but something entirely different, the Crooked. He stands firm, hand on the sword hilt, blood running down his cheek. Before him, the defeated figure turns and flees into the depths of the forest, her sharp footsteps echoing in the distance. With quiet determination, he watches as the figure disappears, and one thought cuts through the post-battle silence. Only one remains. With a dull roar, the huge enforcer Kinkakshu tensed, and his own weapon met the bright, crackling blade in a shower of sparks. From afar, he instantly recognizes the weapon, the purple lightning, the sword once owned by the late Reinful, and recalls its feature. Forged from ore that delivers powerful electric shocks, it can only be wielded by one strong enough to withstand such a current. She also knows that electric energy has another purpose: to enhance the user's body. On the battlefield, Reinful stands firm. The power of the sword pulses through her body, and she faces a huge opponent, with Arya beside her. She lunged forward, her blade, a shining arc of energy, struck the Punisher's weapon with incredible force. Sudden rage catches him off guard, surprise flashes across his face. Iris, however, remains completely focused on the fight. Arya smoothly joins the attack, and together they advance their swords, raining a coordinated, lightning-fast avalanche of strikes on the Punisher's defense. Here. During their blows, a smile blossomed on the guard's face. He praises them for good coordination, but Iris simply responds with a cold, determined look. She and Arya rush forward with a shared battle cry, and the massive Punisher lowers his heavy blade to meet them. The strike swept through the air like a wave and cracked the ground beneath them, while Arya parried it and Iris prepared her electrified strike. When the dust settled, the performer stood, gasping, amid the shattered earth. Iris looked at him and suddenly realized their moment was over. He looked at her energy still quietly crackling around her sword and said he missed the figure wrapped in lightning he once knew, comparing her to her father. Iris's eyes widened, and she directly asked him if he was sent to kill her father. He firmly denied the accusation, explaining that her father was only an obstacle to him, and that he was actually interested in the man considered the strongest in the kingdom of Galdia. Hearing this, Iris instantly understood everything. She assessed his power and mentally decided that the strength of his swings was colossal but not insurmountable. She could fight him. With renewed determination, she called to Arya, suggesting they attack together. Arya met her gaze, her face hardened with agreement. Their opponent, however, smiled slightly, as if it amused him. He honestly admitted that their performance was better than he expected and challenged them to hold out for one more minute. The opponent stomped his foot into the ground, the soil cracked from the impact, and a wave of power burst forth from it. He declared that now it was his turn. Iris and Arya watched tensely as the huge pressure of the enforcer bore down on them. He rushed forward with incredible speed, and Iris instantly rushed to meet him, shouting to Arya to hide behind her, and parried his huge blade with her sword. She fought against his stunning strength, gritting her teeth. The enforcer mockingly said that she didn't even last 10 seconds. Suddenly he sharply detached and rushed past her, his true target revealed. Iris screamed in fright, shouting the name of the district. When he lunged at her, Arya stood firm, her face tightened with determination, and she swore not to let him pass. She met his attack head-on. A blinding flash of light exploded between them. The force of the blow stunned even the massive guard. Arya was thrown back, coughing up blood, her defense shattered. Her body hit the ground with a dull thud. Iris froze in horror and shouted her friend's name, seeing Arya wounded, and a network of cracks hung in the air where the barrier once stood. She does not retreat, sword at the ready. As the enforcer Kinkakushu addresses her directly, he acknowledges her as the princess, the holy sword, and says that finally they stand face to face. Watching him, she felt the pure evil of his magic. He transforms and undermines her. She loses if she only dodges, but if she focuses on defense and prolongs the fight, she still has a chance. Before she could fully devise a strategy, he exploded into motion. Shrouded in dark energy, the enforcer raced across the ground, closing the distance in a blurred whirl, and Arya, watching from below, realized with horror he is running straight at Iris. Unable to dodge in time, she decides to meet the attack head-on. She plants her feet firmly on the ground and raises her sword at that very moment. the huge, energy-filled blade of the Punisher crashes into her sword. The clash explodes with a fierce wave of dark power. Shards fly into the air, and Iris strains with all her might under the crushing force of the blow. Her tiny figure is lost before the enormity of the attack. But she does not break. Her blade hums and shines brightly, repelling the advancing darkness, and a mask of focused fear freezes on her face. Finally, the flow of energy subsides. Iris drops to one knee, gasping for breath, but she withstood the attack, and the executor looks at her, and with a note of approval in his voice says that she took the blow flawlessly. He snorted and added that it is precisely because of this trait that he considers both her and her father so foolish they always choose to protect others, even if it costs them dearly. She let out a low, mocking laugh, completely unimpressed by her determination, standing in a defensive stance and breathing heavily. Her face hardened, her eyes burned with conviction despite the cuts and sweat, and she said that if her actions were the same as her father's, then she had done nothing wrong. He waved off her words as nonsense. The Punisher said that he did not need to understand her reasoning at all. She would have to go and suffer the same fate as her father. She felt her strength draining and understood. She might not withstand another such blow, but there was no other way out except to fight. The energy began to spark and crackle again around her blade. Her sword glowed and she roared fiercely, "Come at me." In response, the executor lunged forward, his massive blade looming, ready to strike. The two warriors collided in a fierce explosion of power. Their blades clashed with dazzling speed. Steel howled against steel, and the strike sent shockwaves through the air. Their blades locked, the enforcers' faces twisted with tension, and Iris tensed every cell to restrain his overwhelming power. Her strength was failing. She was thrown back by the Punisher's stunning might. Just as her defense was about to break, a darkly clad figure flashed by, deflecting the massive blade with a sharp clang of steel. The Punisher could only freeze in stunned surprise. The rookie firmly planted his feet in the ground and became a shield before the exhausted Iriswith's sword ready. He became the new line of defense against their enemy. He turned over his shoulder, a bloody stain on his cheek, and quietly apologized for being late. From behind him, Iris lifted her head and, with relief in her voice, recognized him as Shuei-sensei. Tears of relief welled in her eyes, and she looked at her protector, assuring him that everything was fine. His gaze turned icy as he met eyes again with the enforcer. The old warrior responded grimly, and the harsh truth dawned on him. If Altus was here, Fis was dead. The Punisher realized he was the last one left. Standing amid the devastated landscape, Altus confirmed it with a single word. On the battlefield still scarred by the recent conflict, the mighty Punisher Kinkakshu Adelgrat stands against the young Alta. The ground between them is torn, a clear sign of unleashed power, and behind them, the scattered students Alta came to protect are recovering. His gaze falls on the fallen Arya, a small smile on his lips despite the blood on his cheek, and he praises her, whispering to the unconscious girl that she did well and gave everything to protect Iris. Hearing his praise, Iris looked over her shoulder, her face smeared with dirt and fatigue. She quietly whispered to herself that Arya was truly reliable, and Alta confirmed this, noting how dependable she had proven to be. Asked about Arya's condition, Iris, holding her friend close, quietly said she was fine but unconscious, then apologized and admitted that she should have been the one to do this. Alta waved off the apologies and insisted that she had done well to protecting Arya and surviving this ordeal. His face hardens, his gaze sharpens and focuses. He looks at the opponent and says to Iris, "Leave the rest to me." Confident announcement made Iris fall to her knees and bow her head in shame. She regrets failing again. If the sensei hadn't come, she would have been lost, a complete failure, even though she pretended to be the princess of the sacred sword. She struggles with feelings of inferiority, while Alta stands silently, back to her, gazing at the destruction stretched out before them. After a minute, he returns to the kneeling Iris and says he will promise her one thing, starting with what he first thought. Becoming a teacher or a sword master is not his path. There and then he resolutely declared his intention to defeat that man at any cost. Drawing his sword, he proclaimed himself the strongest knight in the entire country. He then directly explained to the Princess Shali swordswoman what that means. As long as he serves as her knight, she will not be able to achieve her goal to become the strongest in the country. She continued, saying that is exactly why she needed him. Someday she will understand what it truly means to be the strongest Princess Shali sword bearer, but for now he was the only one who could protect her, and she asked him to rely on him. Her eyes opened wide as she looked up at him. Her face still bore the marks of the recent battle, and she could only whisper his name. Suddenly a thought struck her. Since her father died, she believed she could rely on no one, not her mother, not even Arya. But now, if she truly allowed herself to express her feelings, she wanted something from that moment to last forever. Tears streamed down her face abundantly, and she finally begged aloud, "Sensei, please save us." He smiled gently, placed a comforting hand on her head, and promised that of course he would. After all, he was her guardian and instructor. He stood opposite the huge guardian Adelgratz, who acknowledged the boy's impeccable stance. Adelgratz ordered to raise the sword, but Altus simply asked if he had made him wait. He explained that he was not boasting and emphasized Adel could attack at any moment. The enforcer smiled, admitting that he himself was eagerly awaiting this fight. With a tired expression, he noted that they were all crazy maniacs of battle. Adel's smile grew even wider, and he exclaimed that he was eager to fight the one considered the strongest knight. The performer suddenly lunged forward with incredible speed, shouting that this wild aggression was the very essence of the sword gang. Alta prepared himself, feeling the immense magical power behind this rush. From this flew a storm of blosa technique he recognized as the Sword Saint's technique, but as the attack descended, Alta calmly said he had seen it before. The enforcer's confident advance met unexpected defense. His powerful strikes were deflected aside, and he emitted a short sound of effort and surprise. Watching the chaotic consequences of the parry, he realized that a direct clash between them would indeed be dangerous. The force of the counterattack hurled Adel backward through the air. The enforcer found himself in the whirl of his own reflected power, while Alta stood in place with an outstretched hand, as if he was controlling the entire counter-maneuver. Enthralled by the explosion of his own reflected power, amidst all the grunts, roars, and defiance, he refused to be underestimated. His defiance met a dazzling flash. The magical energy exploded and completely engulfed him. The force of the explosion echoed through the hall. Iris, her face full of anxiety, shouted her teacher's name as Adel burst out of the smoke, roaring with rage. Alta instantly assessed the situation and understood. If the effect of the sword with the blue sheath passed through, he could neutralize the magical explosion, so he had only one option left: to demolish the nearest wall. Without hesitation for a moment, he turned and rushed toward the stone obstacle, sword at the ready. Still confused, Adel could only watch him go. When Iris screams his name in horror, Altis breaks the stone wall with one powerful strike, opening a path of escape into the darkness beyond. He rushed through the freshly made hole and flies into the void below, while debris falls around. He gracefully lands in a wide stone channel, realizing he is in underground waterways, and says with relief that this is not a sewer. He plopped onto a stone platform in the darkness of the underground channel, debris from his escape falling and rumbling around. His eyes quickly scanned around, adjusting to the darkness of the underground cave. Holding his sword at the ready, he noticed with grim satisfaction that no one would interrupt them here. But from the darkness came a voice that addressed him directly and accused, "You destroyed the sword gang, I gathered." From the darkness emerged the huge silhouette of Adelgratz. He said the assigned task could wait. In truth, he wanted to fight Alta. The huge warrior loomed over him, his presence oppressive, and at that moment Alta felt an epiphany. This man was exactly as he had been in his previous lives. Thoughts again carried him to that past life, a time when he was an unmatched sword saint, and he remembered endless daily battles, climbing a lonely peak where he ultimately found no one stronger than himself. He dreamed of only one thing: to become strong, but when he achieved it, he was left with nothing. Having found no more reasons to fight, he simply stopped. He intended to live this new life simply, quickly earn some money, and finally break free from that endless spiral of battles. But now his priorities had changed. He caught himself thinking about how far Iris would go and how much she would grow. He wanted to witness this journey, and if his opponent insisted on depriving him of this, then he would fight, sword at the ready, gaze fixed on the warrior before him. A new determination settled in his chest. The man he now was finally had a reason to fight. With a deafening roar, a huge figure fell amid the ruins. A muscular man with white hair and beard, sharply contrasting against his dark attire, introduced himself as Adelgrat from the sword gang, looked down at young Alta Schweitz, and vowed to kill him with all his strength. Unfazed by the threat, the boy raises his eyes and looks firmly. Realizing they were alone and no one noticed, he accepts the challenge and resolutely says he will respond to the man's intent in kind. The calm challenge confuses Adelgratz, and he lets out a muffled sound of surprise. The boy does not back down. The sword in his hands is ready, like a silent testament to his determination. He summons power, whispering, "Instant summoning." A dazzling light flashed before him, and from it, as if from thin air, appeared a majestic long sword. The sudden appearance of the weapon instantly draws Adel's attention. He froze, eyes fixed on the silvery, shining blade now hanging in the air. He grips the hilt of the summoned weapon, its glow illuminating his face. He calls the blade Mystic Silver, the very sword that belonged to the sword saint Raoul Esau. The name Sword Saint struck Adel. He watched as the boy held the legendary weapon, feeling its presence looming over everyone with a heavy burden. Suspicion clouded Adel's face, and he demanded to know, if this was truly the sword saint's blade, why was it with the boy? Alta calmly said it was simple, it was his sword, and this answer only fueled Adel's anger, who growled, demanding to know what the boy had done. In response to the Punisher's rage, Alta Schweitz raised the shining blade of mystic silver and loudly declared, since he promised to win, he would fight with all his might and claim the title of Sword Saint. He directed the sword straight at the enemy. A drop of blood trickled from his lip. With an unwavering gaze, he challenged, telling Adelgraths to come at him because he was sending that man to death. His bold statement is met not with anger, but with deep, deafening laughter echoing through the ruins. Adelgraths throws his head back, genuinely amused by the boy's audacity. He asks with contempt how that boy can be so saintly at all, and Adele says that if the legendary Rolai South were still alive, he would be over 60, so the boy's statement is impossible. To his skepticism comes a calm, almost apologetic correction. Alter informs him that Raoul I South died 15 years ago. This news completely caught Adele by surprise. The revelation makes Adele fall silent for a moment. Then, brushing off the thought, he decides he no longer cares about the truth. The only thing that matters is the fight. He says he will simply enjoy the moment and rushes forward to attack. His lunge ends with a fierce strike, which Alta meets face to face. The clash of their blades releases a blinding explosion of power. The shockwave threw Adelbeck back, his eyes wide with disbelief. He noted that although Alta's parry was impressive, his own sword should have hit the magical explosion directly, and Alta calmly explained that there was nothing surprising, she simply cut the magic itself. He gives his opponent no time to recover. Sword raised high, he tears forward, swinging a wide, powerful arc, and Enforcer Adelgratz clicks his tongue in irritation, tensing in anticipation of the blow. The initial swing is barely noticeable. He smoothly guides the blade, weaving it in the air in a dizzying pattern of light and steel. In response, Adele unleashes a torrent of unrestrained power of fierce, crackling aura bursts from his body. The boy froze, halting his advance because he finally understood the essence of this new defense. It acts like explosive armor, and as long as the one who activated it keeps it on, it is hard to even touch it. Unfazed, he lunged the sword forward. The tip of the blade struck the sizzling energy field, producing a sharp metallic screech. He presses harder, but the defensive aura stands firm and repels his blade with a deafening roar. Pressure becomes unbearable. Adel cried out when a blinding flash exploded at the point of contact between the sword and his aura. The explosion raises a huge cloud of dust and debris. The smoke begins to settle, and the young swordsman stands ready. His blade is still aimed at the very heart of the explosion. When the dust from the explosion settled, he saw Adelgrat standing firm, breathing heavily but clearly impressed. The senior warrior smiled and said it was wonderful, admitting that even at full strength he could not land a blow. He did not hold back in praise, his voice ringing with genuine admiration. He said that Alta Schweitzer's abilities were so incredible that they almost made him believe in reincarnation. Alta noticed that the warrior seemed truly happy. Adele confirmed this without hesitation, explaining his long-standing desire to fight the strongest person in the world, the Sword Saint Raoul. With a sharp, confident smile, he admitted that Alta really was the Sword Saint, but immediately and boldly claimed that he himself was stronger. When he began boasting about his magical power, the words stuck in his throat, and a look of confusion flashed across his face. He felt his energy inexplicably begin to fade. The reason for the power drain became immediately clear. Alta's sword pulsed with bright light and actively sucked magical energy from the air around. Looking at his opponents with the aura of wind, Alta calmly spoke, confirming the unspoken question of the warrior. Did Adel only now notice that his weapon was absorbing magical power? Then he revealed the true nature of his blade. It was forged from kulite, a special material that absorbs all magical energy around. He stood unwavering in the shining circle created by his sword, and calmly told his opponent that he no longer had any magic left. Delgratz began to doubt the nature of the ring, and Alta explained its significance. In the past, it was a dueling arena place where disputes were resolved not by magic, but only by skill and physical strength. He explained in detail that this circle marks the exact range of his skill. The sword in this zone absorbs magic. He defeated every opponent with this blade, and added that although Adel might know about the legendary silver sword, he clearly did not know its true hidden power. Delgratz dismissed this tactic as foolish, admitting that it might work for the legendary Raoul Izevd, but Alta now is just a child, and he mockingly laughed, asking how he could possibly defeat him in battle, even with magical enhancements. He paused for a moment, then agreed with the boy. If Alta has even the slightest chance of victory, everything must be decided here and now in the very duel circle. Enforcer Kinkakushu lets out a huge roar, his body crackling and sparking with power. He tenses before the next exchange of blows. Standing before this overwhelming power, Alta does not retreat, the sword drawn forward. He coldly and focusedly understands that he has not yet absorbed all the strength of his opponent. The blades clashed in a dazzling flash of light and a deafening roar, the strike sending shockwaves through the air. The two warriors were locked in a clash of pure strength. steel screeches against steel, and magical energy bursts from the point of their collision. The enforcer screams from the strain. Alta feels the last strength of the man flowing into his blade. Finally, he did it. Absorption and the prolonged fight exhaust him, but his eyes do not stray from the goal, from his. The opponent is now weakened. He sees a gap. Dodging a desperate counter-swing, he lunged forward and plunged the sword cleanly into the guard's chest. The big man's eyes bulge in disbelief. Sweat runs down his face. He gasps and cannot comprehend what just happened. He can only guess how. Enforcer Kinkaku Shu staggered from the previous blow, stunned by the opponent's power. He could not understand how a boy with a fragile build could match his strength. Was he not enhancing his body with magic? He remembers how long he searched for someone stronger than himself, a search born from losing all hope in his country. Now he sees how pointless that despair was. He realizes the seriousness of the situation. If he lets his guard down even for a moment, he will be cut to pieces. But instead of fear, a maniacal smile blooms on his face. He is wildly glad to have encountered such a worthy opponent, understands that he is dealing with a true sword saint, and with renewed determination declares that he will kill the boy. Inspired by this thrilling insight, he lets out a fierce roar, a challenge to fight, until one of them reaches the absolute peak. Their weapons clash, and a deafening roar of strike sends waves through the air, and sparks fly from the screeching metal. The exchange of blows pushed the thug back, coughed hoarsely, and spat a stream of blood, breathing heavily through the pain, admitted to the boy that he was getting immense pleasure from fighting a true sword saint. His face turns into a mask of pure, blood-soaked determination. He shouts that he does not care if he dies. He will defeat his opponent at any cost. The boy, with a drop of blood at the corner of his mouth, calmly watches the rampage of the enforcer, sees not strength in him, but a mad obsession, the inevitable end for those who blindly chase power. He holds the sword forward, the blade shining with a dazzling white light, and addressing the opponent, says that this is the least he can do and asks to accept it as a sign of gratitude. Enforcer Kinkaku looks back, his face a mask of distrust and confusion. Beads of sweat appear on his forehead. He tries to comprehend what he sees and aloud asks if it is some kind of magic. He explains the nature of his weapon. The silver spirit sword accumulates magical power equal to the number of people he has defeated. He recalls that in his past life he never used this ability because he was a person who insisted on victory only through swordsmanship, but now he is no longer the same. With steel determination, he says that now he will unleash part of the accumulated power. The motive is clear. A girl awaits him upstairs. From the tip of his blade burst a colossal wave of pure white energy, rushing forward and completely engulfing the guard, who could only watch in stunned silence. A ray of light tears through the landscape, a cataclysm that destroys everything in its path. When the light finally faded, a huge, smoking chasm remained in its place. From afar, Iris Reinfels looks at the scale of the devastation with disbelief. She turns to Arya and Natria, who are kneeling nearby, and Iris asks aloud if that incredible power belonged to their teacher, to which Arya, no less stunned, replies that she doesn't know, but the fight is probably over. She sits on the ground and bandages her wounds, nearby Arya and young Natria. Arya advises Iris to stay away because of her injury, but Natria says that Iris is too stubborn to listen. Iris apologizes for her recklessness, and Arya agrees with a smile only if Iris buys her dessert. Her facial expression becomes firm with determination. She has already made up her mind. She will wait and believe in it. She tightly grips the sword, and its energy sparks around her hand. If Adelgratz returns, she is ready to face him alone. When Arya sees the unwavering determination of her friends, her own will strengthens together. They will see this through to the end. A sudden clatter from a neighboring structure made them flinch, and they both sharply turned toward the source of the sound. Alta Schweitz crawls out of a crack in the ground. He realizes that the underground ladder led him right here. His sudden appearance threw Iris off balance. She stepped back, shocked, and at the same time relieved, and Arya exclaimed his name in surprise. He tells the exhausted students that they don't need to get up. Arya, whose face is a mixture of hope and anxiety, immediately asks if he won. He smiles, a dark wound mars his cheek, and without hesitation confirms his victory. Of course, he says. His words are reinforced by the sight of the scattered, cratered earth beneath his feet like a silent testimony that he truly kept his promise. His indifferent confirmation completely confused Iris. She mentally decides that only her sensei could so easily declare victory, and gathering her courage, she addresses him. Sensei, I want to tell you something. She sincerely thanks him. Her cheeks blush with excitement, and words flow from the depths of her heart. She's sure that her father would also be very grateful for what he did. He waved off her thanks as if to say, no need, and instead said that her father should also be proud of how she has grown, Iris Sands. His praise caught Iris by surprise. She fell silent and blushed, and Arya did not miss this. Looking at her friend, Arya spoke, quietly raising her thumb, and admitted that when they first met, she sincerely wanted to fight him because she was sure, with her magic, she would never lose to her teacher. Her words fade, a memory of Iris and Alta clashing comes to mind, and Iris picks up the thought, confessing that the truth was clear from the first time their swords crossed. Her face, covered in dirt after the battle, softens with a light blush. She thinks to herself that her teacher will always be, and her thought fades in quiet admiration. Her dream is interrupted by Alta. Addressing her and Arya, he says he will call the knights to take care of their treatment, adds that he has something to investigate and will be away briefly. Both girls nod. He returns and walks alone into the foggy forest, his thoughts already on the next task. He knows this is not the end. One enemy remains ahead, with whom he must deal. As he disappears among the trees, a last thought flashes through his mind. Dealing with that last threat is no longer his business. In the luxurious hall, Prince Zealtillik trembles in his exquisite chair. He has just received news. The band of swordsmen has been completely destroyed, and their target, Iris Rainful, remains unharmed. Rage bursts out. He bangs a glass on the table. Its contents splash, and he roars at the subordinate, a silent figure in a dark hood and mask, demanding to know how it can be so difficult to kill a mere 15-year-old girl. He continues the tirade, pointing an accusing finger at the masked figure, reminding her of the exorbitant sum she is paid, and asks how a 12-year-old brat can be slowing down their entire operation. The prince openly declares that he hates incompetent people. In response, the masked figure calmly asks if he means that they are ready to deal with this personally. Stunned by the unexpected question, Zil froze and just watched as the mask in front of him cracked and fell off beneath. It was not the face he expected, but a sharp-eyed young woman who calmly asked him to repeat what he had just said. A confident smirk plays on her face. She leans forward slightly, as if hinting that the prince should at least know who he is really dealing with. Then Lemir Owen raises a small round device, addresses it directly, Zealtillik Sama, and announces that they have a recording of his full confession. He hired a gang of swordsmen to carry out the assassination attempt. She watches as Prince Zil's face contorts with disbelief, his eyes wide open, and he calls her by name. She calmly pulls out a noticeable mask and explains that it was taken by a talented 12-year-old subordinate of the gang member, Sword, Fismaiden, and it is this mask, she continues, that led her into this room. Having the recorded confession of the prince and this physical evidence, she declares that this is more than enough to finally confirm all suspicions against him. The prince's shock turns into a sneer. Can any mere knight commander intimidate him? He is the king's son. Brushing her off as a wounded opponent and no threat at all, he draws his sword and demands the evidence, promising to find a reason for her death. He lunges forward, roaring that he will not let her stand in his way, but his path is suddenly blocked by Ulta's swift intervention. With a sharp clang of steel, Ulta effortlessly parries the prince's blade, sending it upward and leaving Zil momentarily stunned. He presses his advantage, locking blades with the prince, while Ulta calmly tells him that he trusts too much in his own strength, both in his influence and in his swordsmanship. Later, in the austere headquarters of the Black Knights, Alta sat at the table feeling that paperwork was a truly refreshing break from everything else. He stands in a luxurious office in the ceremonial uniform of the Dark Knight and, smiling slightly, tells himself that it has been a long time since he last wore it. Opposite him, Lemir Owen greets him with pleasure, another task brilliantly completed, and now that Prince Zil is securely guarded, she thinks that those who died during the mission can finally receive their due reward. He notices that her workload seems to have only increased. In response, Lemir confirms her words. They are being overwhelmed with requests due to the recent incident, and on top of that, they still need to find out who let the assassin into the palace. He admits that they have plenty of problems. He smiles cheerfully and says that he has already calculated how much he will earn and eagerly awaits his special bonus. While Lemir only remarks that he is as greedy as ever, he just laughs and hints that the real hardship is only beginning. Walking down the corridor, Lemir asks if he regrets the time when he was an instructor now that the matter is settled. Then she changes the subject and wonders if they are going to discuss the new mission, but she gently explains that this is not quite the purpose of their walk. He answers the previous question and admits with a smile that he really enjoys teaching, but says, first and foremost, he is a knight and will put duties above all else. He assures that he will fulfill Iris's promise even without the official title of mentor, and with a determined look, names his true dream to earn enough to settle in a village and live quietly like a recluse. His confession completely unsettled Lemir. She shouted that being a recluse is yet another inappropriate dream for a 12-year-old, and after composing herself, she suggested discussing it later in a bar, where they can also talk about the new mission. Outside, the bell of the city clock tower rang, and its echo spread through the streets. In the Fiorum Academy, the sunlit courtyard buzzes with the lively chatter of students, and among them Arya Natria shines with laughter, waving to someone unseen, walking with classmates, normal life has returned to the campus. But her attention soon turns to Iris Rainful, who stands alone by the stone parapet quietly gazing into the distance. Arya, another friend, approaches, calls her, and asks how her injuries are doing. Iris turns around and smiles gently to calm them. With a bandage on her cheek and her arm in a sling, she insists that she is fine and thanks them for their concern. When her friends leave, a familiar voice sounds behind its Alta, who notices that she is still wearing a bandage after the recent trial. He makes a formal bow and declares that it is an honor for him to be her personal escort, but it is clear that he immediately doubts whether it was really worth saying that. Her cheeks flushed from his words. She recalls his earlier promise that he can be relied upon, and his solemn confession completely surprised her. Now alone with him on the balcony, she listens as he explains. The commander reported that the Sirius Black Order is understaffed, so his new task is to stay at the academy with her, except for occasionally going on night missions. Iris lowers her gaze, her face clouded, and asks if she is just a burden to him. Alta instantly denies it and insists that she can count on him, and she, noticeably sighing with relief, quietly accepts his assurance. She blushed with surprise when Alta smiled and said that she is also a student and actually still a child, and he couldn't help but quietly laugh at her reaction. He listened as she passionately declared that she wants to become a swordswoman, just like him. Although he admitted that he doesn't quite understand, he was glad that she has a goal. With new determination, Iris proclaimed that she will follow her father's will, become a knight, and someday surpass him. He quietly expressed hope that she would succeed. She solemnly addressed him by rank, First Officer Alta Schweitz, and asked him to become her guardian. He firmly grasped her hand and gladly agreed. The moment was suddenly interrupted by a stunned Aurea Natria, who had obviously seen the whole conversation, and Iris, embarrassed, called her friend by name. She immediately asked Alta, is he going to pretend to be an instructor again? He calmly replied that after classes they could arrange a duel, and this proposal clearly irritated Iris. She blushed and insisted that if he is going to fight seriously, then let it be with her, putting everything else aside within herself. He realized that his life at the academy would become difficult again, and Arya quickly noted that she was the one who asked him first. He quietly smiled to himself, thinking that this life was the one he would never have dreamed of in his previous life. So he officially became the guardian of Iris, the princess, the holy swordswoman. He did not know how long he could stay by her side, but he decided to protect her as long as he could. He looked at them with a quiet smile. Iris stood straight, determination burning in her eyes, and Arya clung to her hand, sharing the same hope in her gaze. His new goal became clear: to protect and support her until she became the strongest knight defending this country.